On October 26, 2018, Tyler Blevins, most commonly known as Ninja, announced he would be holding a New Year's celebration in Times Square. To set the stage, during this time, Fortnite was at its peak popularity. Kindergarten classes were hitting the gritty, and the public was starting to take notice of Blevins. He was on top of Twitch, and everyone was trying to get that #1 spot. It was the perfect opportunity for him to make his media blitz, hopping on talk shows, streaming with celebrities. But he had one last stop, the heart of America, the Big Apple, New York City. He'd make his name known during the turn of the new year, showing the world what we gamers could be, all before the world would ever even know about Skibbity Riz, Ohio. Floss, Ninja, floss. Don't stop. Don't let us down. Don't switch the camera. Oh no.
I'm not seeing enough movement.
During this moment, he'd committed the most grave crime against humanity, and that was posting cringe. We gamers would never get the respect of the real world, but instead, we were exposed like vampires in the light for what we were, cringe losers. So what is cringe? Fundamentally, cringe is an exercise in empathy. As living, breathing creatures, we go through life learning from our experiences, discovering new things, and looking back at who we were yesterday and going, oh dear God, please shoot me now. Cringe is all about taking that feeling and relating it to others as they go through those same experiences. Some in front of 1 million New Yorkers. To live is to be cringe. Otherwise, we would never even know what cringe was. So, why do I say all this? Well, recently the Borderlands movie any percent speed ran the jump from theater to streaming service, and I went to check to see how bad it could be. And I can safely say that after watching, I realized that Satan is probably real, AIDS exists, and that I'm going to die someday. So, how do we get here? What happened for us to go from a melancholic looter shooter to corporatized cringe? Well, let's go through the series to take a look at how we got here and the creative decisions that led to making Borderlands kind of cringe. Now, for this video, I'll be focusing on the story and the tone of the series, with less attention to gameplay since that's never really been the problem with Borderlands. With the exception of Pre-Sequel, every iteration of the series has always arguably been a step up from the game before when it comes to that. The main theme at the center of the Borderlands series is greed. What happens when we enter an age of technology that allows us to travel to other planets and we leave humanity's greed unchecked? How far will we go to serve it? And where do we draw the line? And what horrors will be unleashed on the universe as a result? This is reinforced by pretty much everything in the game. You play as 4 different characters that each want to seek the vault for its riches. Work with characters with questionable morality, consistently seek better loot, kill bandits for recognition, all while you watch the XP number go up. Now, this isn't a moral analysis of the game. I'm just stating how the mechanics of it get you in the mindset of wanting more. And when you have it, it's never enough. You're constantly thinking about what you're going to do at the next level, what gun you'd like to be doing more damage and is next in line for an upgrade, and what quests from people that need your help are going to be abandoned because the XP reward is just not worth it anymore, and it's more worth your time to dumpster dive for some dude's dirty mags. Will you brave the wastes as a hero? Or just another person out for themselves? Borderlands takes place in a universe where mega corporations reign supreme. Recently, the Atlas Corporation discovered what is known as a vault from an ancient alien race called the Iridians. What they found allowed them to amass power, leading them to the planet Pandora, where the Dahl Corporation is using prison labor to extract resources from the planet. After hearing murmurings of a vault located there, the Atlas Corporation invades, Dahl leaves, and the locals are left to fend for themselves. And in comes you, the Vault Hunter. The game starts with a sketched out sequence with Marcus, a shady businessman, accounting why you're here and the grand journey you're about to be on. A story of treasure, a story of glory, a story of ancient artifacts. And the game kicks off with the travel billboard falling apart with the skag getting hit by a bus, immediately telling you the state of the planet that you're on. You're told of ancient treasures and opportunity, but everything in sight is just, well, shit. This game does a lot with subtle and not so subtle messaging to make you feel like that you're at a pretty low point and out of your mind to be searching for the vault. You're starting on this rundown bus and somehow you're the one that's going to find this legendary treasure. You're shown Mordecai, who comes off as a guy clearly with something to prove with his flashy maneuvers. Lilith, who comes off as a trickster character with her siren powers. Roland, who is calm and collected and just wants to keep a low profile. And Brick, who, I mean, you can guess what he's all about just based off of everything about him. I mean, the game says he's even starring as himself because the devs know it too. Just based off of their character designs, you can already tell what they play like. Mordecai attacks from long range with snipers and has his Bloodwing helping him out. Lilith has her phase walk to weave in and out of enemy range, keeping a distance while dealing elemental and SMG damage up close. Roland keeps an arm's reach distance while using his Scorpio turret for cover and damage. And Brick gets up close and personal. But the great part is you already knew that just based off of their character designs. So much creativity went into their models that all doesn't even need to be said. The armor and camo with Roland, the slim, stealthy look and the leather armor for Mordecai, the insanely muscular and balding Brick with chains as a belt, and Lilith, who seems like a mystery with her tattoos and alien powers. Each character has their own unique role and there's no guessing as to what they do. If you want a lesson in a gold standard for character design, right here is where to look. The feeling of isolation is a theme that many games play with to create a sense of immersion and investment in the world. Most famous for this would be a game like Metroid Prime. You arrive on a planet that's inhabited by various life forms and the space pirates. The Chozo, who were the only intelligent life present, are now nowhere to be found and only exist on the inscriptions of the walls. The structures tell of how their civilization fell. The isolation from all of this drives you to interact and be immersed in the world around you. Find any example of an RPG or adventure game. Rarely are you starting in a big city, but either out in the middle of nowhere or a small town. Isolation is used as a tool to slowly expand the world that you exist in. While isolation is not a replacement for good world building, it can act as a magnet to draw the player towards it. Also, it can very much draw the player towards bad world building so that they take more notice of it as well. So how does Borderlands use isolation to invest the player in the world? Well, we already went over the dinky bus in the middle of the desert and the rough and tumble looking gang, but there's a lot more happening as well. As soon as you get into picking your character, Marcus starts by roasting the whole crew, saying that Mordecai is dressed in BDSM gear and Lilith should get back in the kitchen.
And what's your story, young lady? What can you do? Perhaps you can bake us all a wonderful cake. And you, beef stick in the back.
Jesus Christ. This is the last safe place you'll be, and you're already being told by some guy that you aren't shit while you're making the main decision of the run that will determine your playstyle. The goal of this intro sequence is to pound into you that you're small, alone, and way in over your head. As soon as you get off the bus, there's a mysterious figure who starts giving you guidance. You see a rundown town in front of you with Claptrap greeting you with his overly enthusiastic demeanor. You just got here on a rundown bus where you got roasted by the driver, you're looking at a town that looks like it was abandoned, and now you have a robot from the Doll Corporation talking to you like there's no problem going on at all. All that exists right now are you, the desert planet in front of you, and behind the scenes, the corporations on some other planet that are selling you guns, gear, and don't really care about you beyond how they can use you to get richer. Here you are, all in the middle of that. And the music, oh, the music. The feeling is amplified by the Welcome to Firestone track with its strings and drums, giving you that country desert out in the middle of nowhere feel. The intro sequence is perfect at conveying everything you need to know about the game and what you have in store. It's brimming with personality, passion, and creativity. As soon as you walk into town, you're accosted by bandits, meet the only doctor who has a revoked medical license, and start on the arc to defeat the bandit leader Nine Toes. During this time, the game starts small, going around helping Claptrap, fixing machines, and killing skags and small-time bandits. During this time, you're starting to be built up as somebody who's a bit of a step above the rest, doing for the town what they couldn't do for themselves. Now you start to see the main gameplay loop. Get a quest, take on some enemies, level up, get better gear, repeat. And it does a damn good job at all of that. As I mentioned earlier, you're always looking towards the next level up and the skill point to use, that next gear upgrade, and the next $1,000 that you can make within the next 10 minutes before the deal in the shop goes away. While the beginning is very backtracky and involves a lot of long runs from place to place, it gives you a lot of opportunity to take in the world for what it is. Although on repeat playthroughs, it definitely becomes a lot less fun. You get a taste of the brilliant enemy design of this game, with each that you face having different behaviors, attacks, and weaknesses. You end off this small questline taking on the bandit leader Ninetoes and his pet Skags. When you get back to Firestone, the game introduces you to Scooter and the catch-a-ride that spawns vehicles for you. While he's a goofy character who has some quirks, he's much more down-to-earth in this game than later games make him out to be. He just comes off as some eccentric mechanic guy who doesn't have much of a filter and isn't out of the imagination of someone you can meet in real life who works in that field. I mean, obviously for a mechanic he'd still be wacky, but, you know. And that's all compared to, well, We'll go over that in future videos. But here you're introduced to the game giving you a difficult quest that you're not strong enough to take on before doing some side missions to get you familiar with each area and immersed in various aspects of the world. Whether it be knowing more about certain factions, the footprint of various corporations, the plants and wildlife, the game guides your hand towards engaging with all of it. Although it doesn't push you more than 2 to 3 side quests when it does this to you, because after all, you have a mystery to uncover. Speaking of that though, around this time you're introduced to Patricia Tanis, or her audio recordings, that is. As you pick up the echo recordings, you see someone who starts as an arrogant researcher slowly losing their sanity, giving her unique academic perspective and notes about the world around her, as well as her own mental decline as all of her colleagues get killed by the planet one by one. As you listen to the recordings, you not only start to understand how dangerous this planet is, but also how powerful you are as a player to be surviving out here on your own. Now it's time to take on your next questline, which is going up in the world to take on the bandit leader Sledge. But you need the mine key before you're able to make it to him. After you fight your way through the bandits, you arrive at Sledge's safe house, which seems to be a dull headquarters that has been overrun by bandits, giving you a look around at what once was on the planet. Even the corporations that were on this planet fall victim to it now, showing you not only how relentless Pandora is, but the scale and power that Atlas has to be able to kick Doll out. This is where you face your second boss fight, but your first real challenge against the Roid Rage Psycho. You have to kite him around the arena while dodging grenades and keeping enough little dudes alive so that you can revive yourself every once in a while. It's a fun fight, and you get the mine gate key. Why you just couldn't jump the fence or drive through it, I have no idea. Don't think too hard about it. It's time to go through Sledge's mine. At this point, bruisers have become a mainstay of the bandit faction. They have huge health bars, walk slowly at you, and can use heavier weapons like rocket launchers. As you move around the mine, you take in how extensive Doll's mining operations were. This area is massive with large shacks, conveyor belts, silos, and other rundown structures. At the end of the mine, you fight Sledge, who has a massive shield that you need to whittle down. Oh, so that was a lie. But anyway, you take him down and get the vault key fragment before you're contacted by Commandant Steele, the leader of Atlas's Crimson Lance, to turn yourself in as well as any artifacts that you found. You're moving up in the world to be on their radar now and are rewarded with access to the Doll Headlands. Now, the main goal of the Doll Headlands is to kill Mad Mel so Scooter can fix the new use stations. There's a much larger focus on runner combat, which, when you're not playing multiplayer with a friend operating the turret, can be a little bit excruciating. I usually just found it more efficient to just get out of the runner and shoot them with my guns because of how clunky the runner felt without someone manning the turret on top. I get the feeling that they were going for the wide open desert, the unhinged bandits, and the main antagonist of the area literally being called Mad Mel, but it feels like it only works in multiplayer, which is kind of unfortunate. There is one side quest of note where you take an elevator to an alien ruin and fight an Iridian Guardian for an artifact as well as an Iridian weapon. The Mad Mel boss fight was also not great. It just felt like without any cover in the area, the optimal strat was just to sit back at the ramp and snipe people. It was kind of boring because you would just get dumpstered instantly as soon as you ran into the arena with the runners firing rockets at you. Once again, this is more of a single player issue, but they also put single player into the game for people to play, hence the player part of the phrase. You're granted access to New Haven, which suffices as the main hub area of the game, with all the big NPCs like Marcus, Scooter, and the leader Helena Pierce residing there. You hear mention of the way ahead to a town called Sanctuary being blocked because Helena doesn't want her citizens to die from the patrols of a bandit leader named Baron Flint. I guess moving up in the world also means clashing with bureaucracy and conflicting interests now. Shit's too real, man. But after you do some local favors, you do get cleared to speak with Tannis at her dig site at least. She tells you to talk to Crazy Earl, who wants you to clear out some bandits and spider ants for him. And of course, to grab him some booze. You learn that Earl sold the key to a bandit named Crom. So, on to the next bandit chief. On the next leg of the journey, you fight down the river past some turrets where I died a lot more than I would like to admit, and get to Crom's Canyon. You move up through a series of camps and bridges before you finally face down with Crom at the top of the canyon. Honestly, this is one of the most fun fight sequences in the game. You're constantly moving up from plateau to plateau and ducking behind cover while Crom is pinning you down with his turret before you finally get to him and take him down, getting you the next piece of the vault key. The next piece is located in the Trash Coast, with the inhabitants of Janustown being between you and the vault key. You talk to Taylor Cobb, who tells you to remove his brother Janus, a brutal leader, from power, and it would be best that Helena Pierce doesn't know about it. When you take Janus down, you're told to spread the word and go to a container where you get ambushed. Turns out, he's even worse than his brother, and there was a reason he wanted to keep his activities a secret. After playing through the game again and paying extra attention to the story, it gave me a much bigger appreciation for Helena Pierce than before. While she might seem annoying to you when you play through the game for the first time, on subsequent playthroughs, it genuinely seems like she's a character that's doing her best to hold New Haven together, and you're the person coming in messing up things for her and putting people at risk. Now she has to cater to you to get you out of her hair. After you kill Taylor Cobb, you arrive at the Trash Coast and fight the Rack Hive, where you find the third vault key piece. When you return to Tannis, you're told of the fourth and final piece that's held by Baron Flint, who resides in the Salt Flats. First though, you need to rescue a claptrap that's held by the Crimson Lance in Old Haven. This is your first showdown with Atlas as you move through the town and weave from cover to cover against the armored soldiers to complete the quest. This is where your corrosive weapons come in handy. At the Salt Flats, you defeat some bandit patrols before you get into the camp. Once you get to the top, you face waves of enemies before Baron Flint comes down to fight you and you get the final... Wait, what? Where's the key? Turns out there were only 3 pieces and Tannis betrayed you. Now the ecosystem is shut down, turning off all communications between you and your allies. It's time to fight your way out through the Crimson Lands. Now you need to take the fight to Atlas and get some answers. You fight your way through the hideout and find Tannis. Turns out sending you after Baron Flint was Commandant Steele's idea, and now she has the vault key. I don't really understand the character motivations here, and the game doesn't seem to explain what the character motivations are, so yeah, I guess don't think about it too much. You now have to move through the various outposts, turn the Echo Network back on while fighting the Crimson Lance. You see them in battle with the Iridians. You turn on the Echo Network and get back in contact with Angel, and make your way to the Descent. Moving through the ruins, taking down the Iridians and Lance alike before finally arriving at the vault. This sequence does a climax properly. There's chaos, stakes, and powers beyond your control fighting over something ancient and primordial, and you're caught right in the middle of it, fighting your way up the mountain before you finally arrive at the vault. However, you're too late, and Steele got to the vault first. She prepares her men to go in, but is impaled by the monster that emerges from the vault. Now it's up to you to finish what you started. I don't have any complaints about this boss fight. There's ample cover, none of the attacks feel unfair, and it's a great fight to end off a great game. And as you're congratulated on your victory, you see that whoever was instructing you this whole time was being broadcasted over a Hyperion satellite, setting up the plot for Borderlands 2. Now, while this game isn't perfect and suffers from things such as clunky vehicle controls, not enough information being conveyed to the players in the stats of weapons through things such as reload speed and shield recharge delay, and weapon manufacturers not feeling super distinct from each other, it's undeniable that Borderlands is a title that brought the looter-shooter genre into the mainstream. While you had games at the time such as Fallout 3 and Hellgate London, games that combined RPG elements with shooter gameplay were very few and far between 15 years ago. Oh god, 15 years ago. While we might roll our eyes now, the concept was very novel at the time, especially combining those elements in such a digestible and accessible manner for the average player. This game accommodates to so many different playstyles and players and is super easy to understand. But I think everyone knows that. It's undeniable how successful the franchise is. What the first game doesn't get enough credit for is the great world building, characters, and dark tone and way of life that people living on Pandora just kinda accept, and the way that the game pushes you to interact with it all. Now, while future games in the series have absolutely improved on the formula, if you haven't checked this one out and are looking for a new RPG game to get lost in, that isn't hard to learn, and is relatively short and holds up really well, I mean, what are you waiting for? The sequel? In writing, there are generally three types of conflict that stories boil down to. You have man versus nature, man versus self, and man versus man. Man versus nature is the continuous fight against a primal force that existed long before and will continue to exist long after the blip on the radar that is humanity. These stories focus on the blistering cold, the scorching deserts, the untamed wild, and the fight to stay alive in these conditions. The natural elements in which any of these exist can be more dangerous than any man, animal, or artillery. Weather and environments have won battles, ended empires, and now it's your worst enemy. Man versus self comes from the conflict of self-actualization. When we no longer have to worry about the unforgiving whims of nature, we look inside ourselves and ask certain questions. Who are we? And what do we want to be? What internal decisions do we struggle with? What flaws in ourselves do we need to overcome? And who do we need to hurt before we take an honest look in the mirror at who we are? Man versus man is the conflict that arrives when two or more people have conflicting values. The intensity of this conflict depends on the combination of how fundamental they are to somebody's identity and how irreconcilable they are against somebody else's values. The more fundamental and irreconcilable the values, the more intense the conflict. Now, while there are still extensions of these, such as man versus man branching off into man versus society, and man versus nature branching off into man versus a supernatural or unknown, or the two even combining into man versus technology, these are the three most simplistic groupings of conflict in narratives. Many types of conflict can be present in a story, but usually, one takes center stage and dominates the narrative. After the release of the original Borderlands, the concept of RPG elements combined with shooter gameplay was now a proven formula that worked in the market for video games. Now that Gearbox knew about its success, it was time to capitalize on it and go bigger and better. A bigger budget for the game, a bigger world to explore, better customization options, better gameplay, and bigger war crimes that they commit alongside, such as Duke Nukem Forever and Aliens Colonial Marines. Now, to circle back to the concept of conflict, the first Borderlands was mostly a man versus nature type of conflict in the narrative. Yes, you fought the Atlas Corporation and bandits during the game, and people were mostly the main catalyst responsible for the story, but taking center stage was always the plan of Pandora. The danger of the wildlife, the untamed deserts, the lawlessness of the land, and the power of the vaults were always the main focus of the story. The bandits, the corporations, and even the vault hunters were always reacting to the mysterious and unknown forces of the planet. Nature was what held the power in this story, not any one actor. Pandora attracted the greed of Atlas, Pandora created the lawless towns and bandit camps, and Pandora drew in the vault hunters looking for riches. However, now, the balance has shifted. New actors have come into play. They recognize the danger. They recognize the power there for the taking, and they recognize how to bend it to their will. Now the Hyperion Corporation, led by Handsome Jack, has come to conquer nature and rule it. Not only has the scale of the gameplay become larger, but so has the conflict in the story. This has fundamentally moved from a man versus nature conflict to a man versus man conflict. What happens when one man's desire for unrestricted and absolute power clashes with those who refuse to live under it? That is Borderlands 2. With a new game comes new improvements. The movement is more responsive, the graphics and models are dripped out, and the environments in the world are much more expansive than in the first game. But it doesn't end there. Small improvements have been made to blend the story into the gameplay in a cleaner manner than its predecessor. Now, instead of reading through quests given to you by NPCs and having fewer voice lines, the entire game is voice acted. As you move away from people when they talk to you, they'll then communicate with you through the ecosystem, letting you play the game as you consume the story. Now, while we can make arguments about whether or not this is TikTok brain rot game design and advocate for the value of reading in-game lore to get you immersed in the universe, it's undeniable that this type of mechanic reduces the barrier between engaging with the story and playing the video game. Fundamentally, the goal of this type of game is to appeal to the widest variety of people it can. And when you do that, you have to make sure that no one element of the game takes away from another. That means that the story shouldn't take away from the gameplay and vice versa. The more people you make your game accessible to, the more money it can print. And fundamentally, whether you like it or not, that's AAA game design, and it makes way too much money to go anywhere. This type of design allows more players to interact with the world, get to know side characters, and be more emotionally invested in what's going on around them, while still getting the gameplay experience that they came to the game for. The fewer barriers that exist between different elements of the game, the more consistent and holistic of an experience that can exist among millions of players. The game features 4 main Vault Hunters and 2 DLC Vault Hunters. First up is Axton, who's your soldier character. Maya is the Siren. Zero plays like a ninja. Salvador is your dual-wielding bruiser. Gage is an engineer of a deadly robot. And Krieg is a playable psycho. What's most apparent about the Vault Hunters this time around is the lessons that were taken from the flaws of the previous characters. The abilities you work with feel much more interactive with the game and its world, and are built to mesh with the player's playstyle more efficiently. For example, in the first game, Roland's Scorpio turret only shot what was right in front of it, and the cover just really didn't work. The ability just felt a bit awkward and clunky to use, and worked against the whole efficient Atlas soldier thing. With a lot of the abilities of the turret being activated within a certain radius of it, it felt more like you had to play around it rather than it existing as a tool to supplement your playstyle. In Borderlands 2, Axton's turret will shoot in a 360-degree area and has way more scenarios it can be deployed and taken advantage of in. The only ability that the turret has that's based around proximity to the player is picking it up to refund some of its cooldown when it's no longer needed in a certain position. Same with Lilith's phase walk ability being copy-pasted to Zero, but being more of a reposition with a focus on the melee attack at the end, rather than just being a get-out-of-jail-free card where you can restore your resources and then come back right to the fight. However, even though there are technically more restrictions here, you can either build towards the melee attack at the end, the reposition to get in sniper range, or somewhere in between. In the case of Axton, restrictions were removed. In the case of Zero, restrictions were put in place. But both were to enhance the gameplay. Brick's fists were replaced with Salvador's dual wielding, taking advantage of the guns you looted and adding some decisions to be made with the 2 you decide to fight with. Maya's phase lock isn't really similar to anything in the first game, you just lock an enemy in place. But later skill tree upgrades allow you to augment your phase lock to focus on crowd control, healing allies and tanking, or dishing out tons of elemental damage. The way you deploy your abilities and the situations you put yourself in to take advantage of them added some much needed skill expression that was lacking in the first game. The weapon manufacturers have been given much needed reworks to be more distinct from one another as well. Bandit weapons look like they were jerry-rigged together and have large magazines with not much other redeeming value. Doll weapons have a military look to them, low recoil, burst fire when zoomed, and are still boring.
Okay, I got my B-roll. I'm gonna use actual fun guns.
Hyperion weapons have a polygonal and robotic construction and have more accuracy and less recoil as you continue to fire them.
Oh. Daddy, chill.
Jacob's weapons have an old-timey look and deal tons of damage with bonuses to critical hits and are pretty much unchanged from the first game. Malawan weapons are also pretty similar to the first game and are always elemental with a high effect chance. They also have a sleeker look to them. TDR weapons have a boxy bullpup design with poor stats and a low price, but they can be thrown as explosives when you reload, making them super useful when you go down and need some quick damage. Torgue weapons are always explosive and have a bombastic hot rod-like design. Finally, Vladoff weapons boast high fire rates that increase as you hold down the trigger, low recoil, and a Russian-inspired design. All the weapons have unique naming styles, with bandit guns being misspelled, Torgue weapons being innuendos, and Vladoff guns using Soviet revolutionary terminology. You can tell there was a why not kind of mentality when designing not only the weapons, but pretty much everything about the game. Want a gun that's thrown as an explosive when you reload? Why not? Want a character that only speaks in haiku? Why not? Want a side quest where you meet a guy named Face McShooty who exists solely for you to shoot him in the face? Why the fuck not? Does this game take itself a lot less seriously than the first game and lose some of the dark charm that added to the first game's intrigue? Yes. Do I prefer the first game's tone of storytelling? Also yes. But if that change allows developers the freedom to have fun with the design and put their maximum passion into the project, who am I to say that they're wrong to do it? Also, expecting all art to appeal to your specific preferences is ridiculous, because that would kind of ruin the point of it all, no? It wouldn't really be art if you never had your horizons expanded and your assumptions challenged. The only design decision I'm a bit torn on is the introduction of badass rank. In the first game, as you use certain types of weapons, your rank with them would increase. Let's say the more you use assault rifles, the more damage you deal, the faster you'd reload, and the better accuracy you'd have. With badass rank, you gain badass tokens for doing certain challenges that you can spend on various stat buffs that carry over through playthroughs. I get that this adds replay value to the game, but you lose a bit of the feeling that makes each playthrough unique. In Borderlands 1, maybe early on you got a loot drop for a super good sniper. You never really use snipers, but you decide that you'll try it out since the stats are really good. When the gun eventually becomes outclassed by other weapons, you see that your rank with snipers is really high and say, well, I guess this is a sniper playthrough now. With badass rank replacing weapon proficiency, you lose a lot of those cool moments that you'd have nudging you to commit to other playstyles that you normally wouldn't touch. Also, why is it called badass rank? I don't want the game telling me I'm badass. I want to feel it through the gameplay. Does the game do a good job of making me feel that way? Yes, but it's kind of like going up to me and telling me I have skin. It's true, but it's just kind of weird and creepy to have someone say it to me. Now, for the $1 million question. Was this the game that made Borderlands become kinda cringe? There, I said the thing. Yes and no. No, as this game does have a lot of jokes that even 12 years later still managed to get a laugh out of me.
Dear Roland, I can't help but notice the bloodshots. You are fighting packs of serious firepower. If you are going to have a chance against them, you will need to up your arsenal. You could always arm your men with some high-quality munitions from my store. Shoot them all! Ah, damn it! Dear Bloodshots, I can't help but notice the Crimson Raiders. You are fighting packs some serious firepower. If you are going to have a chance against them, you will need to up your arsenal.
This will
You
hurt.
always arm your men with some high-quality munitions from my store. You might pass. Those Crimson Raiders will be dead in no time.
It's so fucking stupid. But also yes, as there are a couple of jokes that don't really land, pop culture jokes that didn't really age too well since this was created during a time where we thought exhibit memes, Bad Luck Brian, and Rage comics were funny, as well as some seeds that were planted that eventually soulless corporate marketing dickheads would inevitably come to harvest. So the only way to show you how these seeds were unknowingly planted is to go through the story of Borderlands 2, to show you the cringe cracks in the series that would eventually shatter box office records for dogshit movie adaptations. The game starts with a similar intro sequence to the first game, recapping events of Borderlands 1, and that behind the vault wasn't just some monster that was locked away, but also the activation of an element known as iridium. It has mysterious properties and is also responsible for the new elemental type present in the game, slag, which makes enemies more susceptible to other types of damage when hit with it. The other applications? Well, you find out about those later in the story. However, the application that I'm going to talk about right now is the application of some pretty rough game design. Remember how I talked about the game being designed around not restricting your playstyle? Yeah, forget all that. The optimal strat, and it's not even close, is to slag an enemy, switch to another gun, and repeat. Ultimate Vault Hunter difficulty is even balanced around the knowledge that this is the best way to play. Swapping between different elemental weapons based on which enemies you are fighting is cool because not every element will succeed in every situation, and you have to decide when each element is necessary at a certain time. Except for slag. Always use slag. Keep using slag.
Don't stop using slag. Spend less time gooning and more time using slag. Let me hit you, goonie.
Anyway, I'm glad this is the first and only game for slag to make an appearance in. Slag rant aside, the intro sequence is fine. There's not a whole lot to pick apart, but that's kind of the point. You see what's probably the skag from the first game intro limping towards the sign of Handsome Jack and getting dragged by the chain of the bandit vehicle. But this game takes place 5 years after Borderlands 1. That just doesn't make any sense. The skag has been injured for 5 years? you know what? Whatever, man. Borderlands is back, baby. All the bandits get rolled by the train, and it cuts to the 4 Vault Hunters being set up and betrayed by Handsome Jack. The problem is, if Handsome Jack is killing all the people that pose a threat to him and is oppressing the people on Pandora, why hasn't word spread about any of this when we have the technology here to travel between galaxies? Vault Hunters, above everyone else in the universe, should know what's happening on this planet. Are they dumb? Do they not care? Why does Handsome Jack even want to kill them instead of hiring them? Clearly, it seems like they're already down to work for him. Does any of this matter? You know what? Probably not. Just shoot stuff, man. Anyway, the Vault Hunters fight the dudes, you see their abilities, the train blows up, you land on the glacier, and you're rescued by Claptrap. Right from the jump, you can watch the intro and you already know what the game's all about and whether or not it's for you. I appreciate when games have this kind of confidence. If you don't like violence, games not taking themselves seriously, hot magic ladies, explosions, and violence, grab your receipt and go back to GameStop, beta. Because we still did that 12 years ago. Man, is this what a quarter-life crisis feels like? I don't like it, dude. The Southern Shelf is the first area and shows off the directions that the devs wanted to go with for Borderlands 2. While the first game consisted of vast deserts and rundown buildings, this game aims to create way more diverse environments, factions, enemies, and gameplay experiences. The Southern Shelf is full of snow, ice, and glaciers, with bullymongs being the natural threat in the area with their 4 arms, mobility, and ability to throw rocks at you, as well as the inevitable bandits that reside in the area. You also meet Sir Hammerlock, who is alright, I guess. I get the reason for his inclusion. With Pandora being what it is with all the crazy creatures and plants, it sets up a lot of funny gags to have this Victorian wildlife researcher as a character. But that seems like that's all he is. Just a gag. You don't really learn anything about him besides that he lost limbs to a thresher and that he's gay. And this isn't to imply any wokeness has gone too far in gaming stuff, but just that he doesn't have solid character development beyond being set up for gags, and there's a lot more that they could have done with him. He's not a poorly written character, or even a hollow character, but definitely represents the start of a style of writing that would eventually be used as a crutch by the series, which is think of an idea that's funny in theory, do the bare minimum elaborating and fleshing it out, or sometimes even less, and say to the audience, haha, isn't this funny, guys? Once again, he's not a poorly written character, just the start of a style of writing that only goes downhill from here. During the Southern Shelf section of the game, you go on a quest to get back the Eye of Claptrap stolen by a bullymong and fight bandits until you beat Captain Flint to leave the area towards Sanctuary. Earlier rants aside, this game does put a larger focus on characters, their backstories, what they're good at, and their flaws. Throughout the game, you obtain various echo logs of the main cast and what brought them to Pandora. This section also does a good job of establishing Handsome Jack as the main villain. In various recordings, you see him execute Helena Pierce and civilians and chase out the resistance with indifference to the bandits who would inevitably take their place, as it would be easier to offer bounties to get them to do what he wants, sacrificing stability in the area for control. This immediately shows you that it's not people or some overarching mission he cares about, or says he cares about, but power. He also taunts you throughout the game, but is charismatic and funny while doing it, with him giving gruesome details about the murders he's engaged in, bragging about how rich he is, or just being a douche in general, making him the kind of villain you love to hate. During the Southern Shelf, you spend a lot of time with Claptrap. They somehow managed to walk the tightrope of him being cringe and obnoxious while still being somewhat likable. What's funny is you see the attitudes towards and how each NPC treats Claptrap, and you completely get where they're coming from by just being around and listening to him. And that is great writing. It's cringe, but properly harnessed in a way where it's contained and used to enhance the story and characters, as well as bring you into the world.
Ha, Clap is having a shindig. You know I'd go, but I ain't gonna.
Like my favorite line in this entire game. I use it in my personal life too. You know, I'd go, but I ain't gonna.
After escaping the Southern Shelf, you steal one of Scooter's vehicles and earn the trust of the Crimson Lance before entering Sanctuary, the main hub area of Borderlands 2. The game opens up so much at this point, with different areas to travel to, quests that NPCs have, and just, well, look at it. Look at how open that is. With the winding roads, the different environments out in the distance, and overhead, the Hyperion satellite that doesn't let you forget the main threat you're facing. The vehicles also feel way more responsive in this game.
Spanking the landscape. No. Download the Marvel Rivals.
Why?
Bro.
We're trying out.
Bro, what is bro doing?
Are they paying you? You getting that bag, King?
I've watched like 10 minutes of streamers playing it. I don't even
Okay,
know what's
uninstall it
fun.
then.
I'm so
It's not that bad.
Drop the game.
You're introduced to Marcus, Zed, Scooter, Moxie, and Tanis, and the problem with Hammerlock continues here. It feels like most of the cast are just one-trick ponies for jokes. Marcus is greedy, Zed has a reason that his medical license was revoked, Scooter is bad with women and is the butt of Sweet Home Alabama jokes, and Tanis is a crazy researcher lady. This isn't to say that a lot of the setup and punchlines don't work, because they do. The jokes in this game are funny a lot of the time, and when they don't hit, they never feel like they were trying too hard, so it's all good. It just feels like they turned up the wacky aspects of these characters from the first game to 100, but didn't do a lot of character development to go alongside it. Moxie and Ellie and the Borderlands 1 Vault Hunters who you meet later are fine in terms of the quality of their character writing, but man, it really didn't feel like the other side characters got a lot of love and were just played for gags instead. In the first game, Scooter was a wacky guy who applied his skills as a mechanic to survive on Pandora. He was crass, silly, and maybe not book smart, but was good at what he did, and the runners that got you through the game were evidence of that. Tanis was an arrogant researcher, but felt down to earth and human, being driven insane by the isolation of her work, and her coworkers getting killed all around her. She even asked you to be her friend when you completed a quest for her in the first game, since you were probably the person that had most extensively interacted with her at that point. It's such ripe material for character development, but they just don't use it. Now with Scooter, it's haha incest, and with Tanis, it's haha crazy lady says crazy things. With Scooter, it even undermines his character since he's portrayed as this dumb as bricks guy, but somehow made the entire catch-a-ride system. When the jokes are good, like they generally are in this game, the writing is fine, honestly. However, when you remove the funny, that's where it can get really goddamn bad. Fundamentally, a joke is funny because it has an underlying truth to it. Whether it be a truth that nobody wants to admit, or poking fun at the absurdity of aspects of everyday life, comedy relies on some element of relatability. When you remove the comedic writing making something relatable, this type of writing can potentially feel very, very corporate and cringe. Because now there's a disconnect between somebody telling you something should be funny, cool, interesting, or whatever, versus it actually being that thing. When that somebody is a corporation that wants to sell you a hollow product that they think you want, you get corporate cringe. On some level, it's even offensive because you know that they don't relate to your situation, but they do want your money. Writers come and go, but what's always there is what the executives think sells. Haha funny robot, and haha crazy planet full of crazy people, and miss the forest from the trees. If there's bad writing in a serious story, it's seen as uninspired. But if there's bad writing in a comedy story, it's seen as offensive. This game works because the humor is relatable and well written, but in later games and adaptations, well, they begin to have some problems. The next section of the game involves you finding out Roland is missing and possibly being kidnapped by the Firehawk, who turns out to be Lilith after you meet her. You see siren powers are enhanced by iridium and are shown one aspect of the element's power. You go to the dust where you meet Ellie and get a bandit vehicle to sneak into the Bloodshot stronghold where Roland is kept, and have your first skirmish with Hyperion as they fight bandits when Handsome Jack decides to not pay the ransom for the turret-toting trooper. You find out from Roland that the vault contains an ancient Iridian warrior that Handsome Jack wants to take control of. The game doesn't waste any time with unnecessary fluff in the story. Every section sets up characters, plot points, stakes, and objectives. Everything you interact with is meant to show you some part of the world and move on with the story. If you like a certain area and want to spend more time there, you're given multiple side quests to complete if you don't want to say goodbye to that section just yet. If you want to learn more about the clan wars in the dust, you can do that. If you want to get to know a certain character more, there's also content for you.
God damn, Ellie. You fine. I'd let her catch a ride.
If you want to grind the same boss over and over again for that legendary weapon, go ham, King. God, I actually wrote that. The game is excellent at giving you some slack to explore the world and pulling you in again to the main story when you're over-leveled or have exhausted the content in a certain area. They put options in the game to cast a wide net over people with differing playstyles, whether you play for the lore, the characters and banter, or just a grind, man. The next section has you moving to Tundra Express, where you light Varkids on fire to wake up Mordecai, meet Tiny Tina, blow up the train that has the vault key on it, and fight Wilhelm to find out that was just a power cell on board. You're told it'll power Sanctuary for a long time, but turns out Angel is actually working for Handsome Jack, and you just took down the city's shields. In a long shot strategy, Lilith has you grab her some iridium and sends the city airborne with the help of Scooter while you're left stranded, ending the first act.
Yeah, I'm like a... It is like rough using TDR guns sometimes, because like, I'm just like I'm a giga reloader. I love reloading. If there's one thing I love more than breathing, okay, it's reloading, dude. And the fact that TDR guns, you just waste the entire clip if you fucking reload. Rough sometimes. It's rough out there. I'd probably put myself up there with like, you know, the Palestinians or some shit, like for oppression. Like real talk, man.
As much as I talked about my problems with the character development in this game, there are a lot of characters that do get love. Whenever you come across the living areas of certain NPCs, you'll see their food supplies, equipment, and personal effects, giving you a glimpse into how they live their day-to-day life. It's subtle and easy to miss, but adds significant depth to each character you meet. After not playing the game for a while, I thought I'd hate Tiny Tina as a character more because of the whole random XD thing, but honestly, I don't think she's actually that bad. She's someone who grew up on a planet as unforgiving as Pandora, went through the trauma of losing her parents at a young age, and the only way she knows how to express herself in a way that's beneficial to her survival is through crafting explosives and murder. It's actually kind of sad when you think about it. She generally doesn't overstay her welcome, at least in the main game, but later in the series... After getting back in contact with Sanctuary, Angel tells you she's tired of manipulating people for Handsome Jack, and instructs you to get the lunar supply beacon to put Sanctuary back on the fast travel network after Lilith's liftoff knocked it out. This starts a holdout sequence where you see Jack lose his cool for the first time as he realizes he's beginning to lose power over Angel. When you arrive back at Sanctuary, Angel tells you she's charging the vault key and hidden behind a disintegration barrier, a high-tech bunker, and a door that will only open for Handsome Jack. Roland sends you to the Wildlife Exploitation Preserve to chat with Mordecai about a lead to get past the barrier. You're told that Bloodwing had the claptrap upgrade to get past the barrier, but has been kidnapped by Handsome Jack. As you fight through the preserve, you see the lengths that Jack is willing to go to utilize the power of Iridium, and end the section on a boss fight against Bloodwing, who ultimately gets killed. I don't understand why Hyperion just didn't take the tag off of Bloodwing. Why would you not take everything off of a captured enemy in case there's something that you don't know the significance of? That kind of seems like War 101 there, my guy. You go on to recruit Brick, steal a voice modulator from a Jack body double, and fight your way up to the bunker that turns out to be a giant robot ship. So why did we even need to take down the barrier in the first place? All of your allies in this section are even air support, and you don't have any ground troops beyond the player. If only there was some way for you to, oh, I don't know, go over it. You soon discover Angel is a siren, and Jack is using his own daughter to pump full of iridium to charge the vault key. Angel asks you to destroy the iridium injectors and kill her to stop the vault key from charging, while Roland and Lilith help you out. After you destroy the injectors, Angel dies, and Jack shows up to kill Roland and kidnap Lilith. When you get back, you can continue the story or stick around to help the city mourn by telling everyone the bad news. You feel the melancholic mood of Sanctuary as the Resistance learns of its leader's death. While this is a small touch, it's indicative of the theory behind Borderlands 2's game design. If you only care about gameplay and shooting things, you can just move right on to other stuff. If you want a bit more story and to mourn Roland's death with everyone else, you can do that too. It's not a fun quest gameplay-wise, but it's quick and easy, and acts as a send-off for a character you played as or alongside in the first game to make the world feel more alive. It always adds a significant level of world building to watch the world as it reacts to the events that happen around it. His death is handled with a level of respect for the players since this was a character they knew and loved. This is a great way of writing story around the gameplay, rather than creating gameplay around the story. Not everyone will engage with it, and that's okay, but the people who want to will find the story and world enhanced by it. The people that don't can skip it and go back to shooting things and not do quests where you only talk to NPCs, because from a strictly gameplay-centric perspective, this quest does take away from the core gameplay experience. One of the big improvements you'll notice during this section is the variety on display. In the first Borderlands, the environments consisted mostly of deserts, with the odd exception here and there. While the enemies that inhabited these environments had a variety of tactics that they'd use against you, it always felt a bit chaotic with everyone just doing their own thing and not really working together. While this makes sense for factions like bandits and creatures without pack mentalities, it didn't make sense for a well-trained faction like the Crimson Lance and pack-oriented creatures like Skags. In Borderlands 2, the classic deserts, frozen wastelands, Hyperion cities Handsome Jack rules with an iron fist, and grassy mountainous valleys bring so much variety to the environments. Each area has its own factions, enemies, bosses, and unique side quests on display. You'll find that more enemies now work alongside each other. Hyperion robots will now have surveyors to repair them and give them shields. Ion loaders will create a barrier you can't shoot through. Wormhole threshers will drag you close to make you a sitting duck for their buddies to dig into. And now even badass Skags will spread their elemental abilities to other Skags. Some enemies even work against their allies in the case of Goliaths for the bandit faction, where you knock off their helmets, highlighting their chaotic and unorganized nature. Now, not only do enemies have different behaviors than they did in Borderlands 1, they also have a variety of encounters you can experience based on the composition of the types of enemies involved and their proximity to one another. Act 3 starts with you heading to the Iridium Blight to get information from the Hyperion info stockade on the vault. First, you get sidetracked to get some explosives to cross the bridge, find yourself back in Firestone, and find out the vault is located somewhere called Heroes Pass. You'll also come across elite Hyperion troops that wield sniper rifles or can jacktivate their cloaks to become invisible. It's a funny line, but to have a soldier say that unironically shows that you only have the most dedicated to the cause that exist as his most powerful chess pieces. Too bad he didn't use them in the intro of the game and just sent regular robots at the Vault Hunters, but you know, whatever. It's also a nice touch for the soldiers to call out your abilities to their allies. I had these guys call out that they were phase locked after I used my action skill on them, which showed that not only does Hyperion have information on you and your abilities, you're a threat that they take seriously enough to brief their soldiers on. It might not seem like a big deal, but that one small line is enough to make Hyperion appear much more capable and threatening than they otherwise would be. They know about you, the player, and they're taking that into account. During this time, there are additional side quests to learn more about how Handsome Jack came into power, his troubled upbringing, and this quest that I like my YouTube money too much to say out loud.
No, you boys gotta do it. 12 Iridium? Like, that's just too good. Like, I mean, you gotta Roblox yourself for 12 Iridium. That's just how it's gotta be.
You can learn that Angel's powers killed her mother, and Jack sealed her away while he used her for his gain while claiming that was for her own good. It's a nice bit of backstory because, yeah, people don't consciously do evil things because they like evil. They delude themselves into thinking that whatever lines they cross and whoever they hurt is worth it for the greater good. When Jack gets mad about anything relating to his daughter, yes, there's that fatherly concern for his child mixed in there, but it's warped by his desire for power. Whenever he loses any kind of power over her, he gets furious. He locked her away to have power over her freedom and to have her siren powers at his disposal. If he didn't want her powers to hurt anyone, which is laughable coming from a character like Jack, why do it in a way where you're isolating your kids from friends, life experiences, and the outside world? It just so happens that what he sees as the most loving thing he could do for her is also what allows him to amass the most wealth and power. This isn't mustache twirling evil, but the way that people end up treading dark paths in the real world. Power and money have the ability to corrupt people. While Jack seemingly does love his daughter in his own twisted way, he's certainly not a good father, and definitely somebody that you need to remove from power. The finale has you fighting your way to the vault through elite Hyperion troops and robots before you confront Jack in a chaotic fight where he sends out clones and drones to distract you. Turns out it worked, and you're too late once again to stop the vault from opening. The fight with the warrior is pretty awesome and is exactly what a final boss should be. You have to use every skill that the game has taught you up to this point. Shooting when you get the opening, taking cover against big attacks, and fire that really should have better indicators of where the hitbox actually is, repositioning when the lava rises, managing resources, and keeping enough enemies alive to revive yourself, but not too many that you begin to take too much damage. After you defeat the warrior, you kill Jack and learn that there are tons of vaults throughout the galaxy, and your work, well, it will never be done. What's ironically ironic about Borderlands 2 is how it occupies the other end of the spectrum it sets out to criticize. Money can buy power, money can buy influence, and money can amplify our worst impulses. Borderlands fundamentally sets out to criticize hollow corporate greed, how money is placed above all else, and the disasters left behind when we do so without purpose beyond that behind our actions. In Borderlands 2, Handsome Jack sees himself as someone with a clear purpose and goal, but every action he takes betrays that. While he says the things he does are for the greater good, those things also just so happen to be what net him the most money and influence. However, all money is just a means to an end. Power in paper form. Whether you're born into money, work your entire life towards it, or are at the right place at the right time, money buys freedom. The freedom to do and say as you want, the freedom to pursue your passions, the freedom to explore the world, and the freedom to do good for others. I'm not saying you can't do any of those things without money, but it definitely helps and makes those things a lot easier. After the success of Borderlands 1 and the approval of 2 with its increased budget, I can't imagine how ecstatic everyone on the team was. Here you are with this type of game that nobody has really made before, and it turns out to be a massive hit. Now many of the restrictions put on you before are suddenly lifted with the increased resources you have access to. You can see the passion shining through every wacky gun you shot, every environment you traveled, every eccentric NPC you spoke with, and every music track you listened to. Gearbox didn't just see the success of the first game as a victory, they saw it as a challenge. How can we go bigger and better than we did before and improve on the formula? They didn't just want to cash in, they wanted to make a sequel. Money wasn't the goal for the developers. Well, most of them. In my opinion, asterisk, allegedly, asterisk. It was the fuel. This game was created with the mindset of, does it sound cool? Yeah, sure, let's put it in the game. And fundamentally, that's the appeal of Borderlands, and why Gearbox was able to expand so much on the first game. What are all the things we wanted to do before, but now can without the budget restraints that came with taking a gamble on a genre of game that hadn't been proven successful in the market yet. Passion was what was behind everything that made Borderlands, well, Borderlands. While from the inside out, it was known what made Borderlands successful. The outside in, that was a different story entirely. So you just made a game that struck gold again. Good job. Now you've not only proved your first game wasn't a fluke, but that you know exactly what you're doing. Now you're in the spotlight and millions of fans are waiting on your next move. Although making a whole new game with an updated engine and cleaner mechanics will take a long time and your momentum won't last forever. What do you do? In the games industry, it's a very common practice to take the final build of the game you just made and make a spin-off, smaller sequel, or even a full sequel within the same framework, make a couple of changes here and there, and release another game within a short time span. This business strategy is seen as a win-win-win by publishers and investors. Publishers can sell a product they know does well in the market at a low cost since a lot of the engine work, textures, mechanics, and balancing are already done. Developers can test out new ideas and mechanics they couldn't try out through DLC, don't have to go through the trouble of creating a project from scratch, and can potentially put a smaller studio on the map since these projects are generally handed over to them. Consumers also win since they get another installment in a series they enjoy to hold them over and keep up the hype for the true sequel to come out. Some of which I'm still waiting on, 16 years later. Valve, you gotta stop gooning me, man. Now, obviously there can be potential downsides to this. With such a short development window, the scope of the project has to be adjusted along with it. This can make these games feel rushed, not fleshed out, and sometimes buggy. If these issues are significant enough, they can make the game seem like a quick cash grab, dragging the series' reputation along with it. The previous game can end up feeling cheapened by this, and the hit to the series' reputation can hurt future installments. You could say that this is an issue with any development cycle, and you'd be right, but the strings attached to a lower budget and higher expectations attached to the specific type of project make the risk of this happening much more common. Shortly after the release and reception of Borderlands 2, publisher 2K Games decided to follow this strategy, since Gearbox didn't have an idea of what they wanted Borderlands 3 to be, and the momentum of the series needed to be followed up on. Homie, those yachts don't buy themselves. Now shut the fuck up and make me my parody of the corporate class. Development of the game was handed off to 2K Australia, with Gearbox providing consultation, resources, and whatever you would consider Anthony Birch. Don't worry, we'll get back to him. In April 2014, the pre-sequel was announced. An omnidirectional mid-air movement was a gimmick that was in at the time. The game took place on Pandora's moon Elpis, so now you can loot and shoot in low gravity, with Oz kits to let you breathe on the moon, and do ground slams that deal elemental or explosive damage. You now have cryo weapons to freeze enemies and make them susceptible to melee, critical, and explosive damage while dealing damage over time. If this sounds broken, that's because it was. It was very broken. Laser weapons were also added, which were always elemental with beam, shotgun, and railgun variants. Slag is also gone, like it should be. The idea behind this game was to tell the story of how Handsome Jack became the villain you fight against in Borderlands 2. All of these were selling points in the next game in the Borderlands series. One thing you'd start to notice at this point though, is that these trailers seemed a bit off. When you watch them, you start to see that the trailers felt like this game was being marketed as a comedy rather than a serious game. Which is kind of weird since this is supposedly about a man that went from a hero and got corrupted into an intergalactic fascist psychopath. In October 2014, the pre-sequel was released and was good. Pretty good actually. One would even say great, but something still felt off. While the reviews of Borderlands 2 were glowing, the pre-sequels were more mixed. Why did we feel so unimpressed with the pre-sequel? Was it the design? Was it wokeness? Was it Randy Pitchford's gooning addiction? Well, let's find out. The main goal of the game was to bridge the events of the first Borderlands and Borderlands 2, hence the name. Haha, epic and hilarious. I love Reddit. The main issues that I have with this game fall into a few categories. The writing, the downgrades in the quality of life, the self-indulgent writing, the pacing, the writing that insults your intelligence, Australians, and did I mention the writing? God, I fucking hate Anthony Birch's writing. If you thought the writing in Borderlands 2 was obnoxious, Anthony Birch was about to show you what was up. My bad. Lay me going to have Derpina hold my beer as I go to be epic trollface very wow. Skibbity toilet. Sorry, had to break the cringe with some real humor. You might think I'm joking, but they unironically included this in one of their trailers.
Skin customizations, vehicle customizations, internet memes. Just kidding. We deleted the out of all those internet memes. Those were awful. Our bad. Wow, such memes very regret.
So all that's left is the question of how? How is it that there is such a huge disparity in how the two games that are incredibly similar to each other gameplay-wise were received by the public? Let's start with the introduction to each game. Now, it might sound like a dumb question, but what's the goal of an introduction to a game? While games do exist that drop the player straight into things, generally, people tend to like context. Where am I? What am I doing? And why should I care? Your who, what, when, where, and hows. Specifically with Borderlands, the who is the most important part here to the gameplay. You want to show off the Vault Hunter's abilities and personalities in the best light possible so the player can choose which playstyle they're going with the entire game. In Borderlands 1, the looter-shooter genre wasn't really a thing yet. So, the intro put the focus on establishing the world, tone, goals, and the playstyles of the characters solely based off of their designs. Ain't No Rest for the Wicked by Cage the Elephant was the perfect track to put over the intro to show that this wasn't going to be the kind of game where you're playing a selfless hero, but a treasure hunter venturing into a dangerous planet mostly out for themselves and doing good things if they align with their self-interest. Since Borderlands was a new series, the intro had to show off what Borderlands was, set itself apart from other shooters, and make it pretty obvious what the playstyles of the characters were. Gearbox made it pretty obvious that you had the warrior/fighter class, the mage class, the barbarian/tank class, and the ranger/sniper class, and used those video game tropes to their advantage. Borderlands 2 had a bit more freedom in its intro since it was already a successful franchise and didn't have to sell what it was to the player as much. The intro put the focus on showing off the new environments, what changed after the events of the first game, the new threat in town, and who was what character, rather than what the characters were. What I mean by that is instead of establishing what the soldier, siren, berserker, and hunter classes were, it was now about who the soldier, siren, berserker, and hunter classes were when you watch the intro, now that you're pretty familiar with what those are. Although, even if you're not, they still do a good job at showing off each character's abilities. Shortchange Hero by the Heavy continued the theme of Pandora not being a planet that heroes go to, but they've got you, and hey, close enough, I guess. There's a rule in the series that it sticks to for the characters you play, and more of the introduction can be spent on the world. The problem is that Pre-Sequel breaks some rules and doesn't take that into account. You have 4 new characters that don't really neatly fit into the tropes that the series has set up. The intro starts with Lilith interrogating Athena about why she helped Handsome Jack rise to power. You find out that she was looking for work and found herself in the employ of a Hyperion programmer. The intro starts with bandits infiltrating the rocket that somehow has an airtight entrance door that can just be opened, I guess. It's fine. They have to have the characters fight in the intro, so whatever. The problem is that they just do such a bad job at showing what half the cast even does. With Claptrap and Athena, you get a pretty good idea, but they don't really cleanly fit into one class or the other. Claptrap just has random effects for his action skill, and Athena has her shield that protects from bullets and reflects the damage back to enemies when she throws it. With the way they introduced Wilhelm and Nisha, you'd have some idea of how they'd play based on their character designs, but very little idea of what they actually do for their action skill. And don't tell me Nisha shoots multiple dudes and Wilhelm has his drones for like one frame. They just kind of assume you watch the trailers before you play the game. It doesn't feel like they put a whole lot of effort into making the intro, and that it was something that was on a checklist rather than a sequence to inform the player about the game. It's not like you'd have no idea what was going on and what the general playstyles were, just that they put the bare minimum in because they just need the intro. Yeah, sure, put Black Dragon as a song for the intro, even though it doesn't make sense and isn't in line with the themes of the series. I don't care. Where's my fucking yacht? The point of Borderlands is that you're no hero, but you are when compared to dipshits, and sometimes that's good enough. The game follows Borderlands 2 in having 4 main Vault Hunters and another 2 that can be purchased as DLC. I already went over Athena and Claptrap, but as a brief overview of the others, you have Wilhelm, who has a drone that attacks enemies and a drone that heals him, while his skill trees make him less man and more machine. And Nisha, who basically has aimbot as her action skill. The 2 DLC Vault Hunters are Aurelia and the Handsome Jack clone. Aurelia throws a shard of ice that moves from enemy to enemy and has a very siren-like playstyle. And the Handsome Jack clone throws out holograms to confuse the enemy, fight and die for him, and work off of his other abilities. What's funny is that even though this character is a body double of Handsome Jack, he really is one of the more interesting and developed characters of the series, but we'll get to that in later videos. The intro sequence is pretty generic and bland, so I'm not really going to spend more time on it. You don't really get any feeling of hype establishing what the game is going to be about like the first 2 games did, and it just sort of feels kind of empty. So the story starts with you entering the Hyperion Helios satellite for a job that Jack hired you for, but it ends up getting invaded by the Lost Legion. Now, you might be wondering why I'm not telling you who they are. That's because the game doesn't tell you either. All you know is that they're abandoned doll soldiers corrupted by the Vault. What are their goals or motivations? Yes. You're introduced to Tacitor and his antagonistic professional relationship with Jack. After a boss fight, so I'm here at the bar and this guy comes up to me and he's like, "Oh," because I was wearing this sash that said birthday queen, right? And this guy, he was like, "Oh yeah, it's your birthday." I was like, "Yeah, you know, well, it was technically on my birthday like a week ago, but like my friends had COVID, so you know, I was like." So what we decided to do was we all kind of went out tonight and we're celebrating both our birthdays. And he's like, "Oh yeah, that's like really cool." And I was like, "Yeah, you know." He's like, "How old is she?" I was like, "Oh yeah, she's like 28 or 25 or whatever." And then I was like, "Yeah, I'm 28. Like I make jokes with my friends that like I'm old, but you know, like older people like tell me to fuck off." And he's like, "Oh, ha." I was like, "Yeah, you know, like I make jokes that like I'm a grandpa or whatever." And he's like, "Oh, haha." And I was like, "Yeah, you know, my grandparents are dead though." And then like everybody at the bar is just silent. It's like, oh man, what did I say? Jack ends up staying behind so that you can escape, establishing him right away as someone who used to put others before himself at one point. But then, you see the writing in this game start to rear its head. Immediately after showing you Jack doing this, Anthony Birch thinks you're an idiot and has Brick say the goal of the game out loud in case you just didn't get it. Wow, thanks man. Anyway, you arrive on Elpis and meet Janie Springs, who is a lesbian, who Anthony Birch uses to preach his political views. That's her entire character. Now, I'm not gonna go on an anti-woke rant or anything like that, and it might have been partly due to me playing as Athena, but this character could not go 2 seconds without mentioning it. Okay, I can't delay this any longer. It's time to talk about the writing. If you've watched previous videos of mine, you'd know that I'm generally not a fan of the anti-woke movement. because it's mostly just become the other side of the coin that it criticizes now. It's more productive for all parties involved to just look at what is bad writing and what is good writing. It's just as stupid to look at a game and say that a character is good solely based on a certain identity, just as it's stupid to say that a character is bad solely because they're that certain identity. It's annoying to watch the internet explode, either raging or sewing out that Assassin's Creed has a black samurai before the game has even fucking come out, and we don't have any idea how they fit into the world or the story. It's fine to have a degree of excitement or skepticism based on what's come out to the public, but it's really weird to have schizo arguments on the internet based on a less than 4-minute trailer. I could just condense this into just be a normal person and have reasonable opinions when you don't have all the information yet, but this is the internet. As soon as you put out an opinion that kind of sort of sounds one way or the other, people will immediately jump down your throat thinking you are either Mustache Man or other Mustache Man. I even had people calling me a hack for not liking The Last of Us 2. So here I am, making a minute-long disclaimer that I shouldn't have to make. But schizos run the internet, nuance is dead, and it is what it is. Disclaimer out of the way, the writing in this game is so self-indulgent and condescending. What I mean by that is the social views expressed in this game are made solely for people who agree with Anthony Birch. And the writing doesn't do any of the work to challenge the beliefs of people who don't and settle for calling them stupid instead. While I don't disagree with being mean to people who are too far gone, I think the majority of people are not in that camp. Just like the majority of people are not ultra-progressive SJWs in open relationships like Anthony Birch is. I'm not trying to dunk on him for this. You do you and live your life in the way that makes you happiest as long as you're not hurting other people. But I think it's good to acknowledge when you're writing a story whether you're putting beliefs into your game that the majority of people will either agree or disagree with so that you can put a certain amount of work into making that argument in your story accordingly. You have to convince people of things. Let's take Arcane for example, because God, I love to glaze this show. In the United States, there's a significant portion of people who think the government has a role in addressing systemic inequality and the divide between the rich and the poor, and those who do not. Arcane makes the argument that it should by showing you the effects of not addressing inequality. Poverty, crime, rampant drug use, mental illness, corruption, civil unrest, and authoritarian responses to that civil unrest supported by a scared citizenry. The writers put in the work to show that people working together, fighting for equality, and embracing self-sacrifice for the benefit of others are what create a better world. Not being apathetic to the struggles of others, chasing vengeance, forcing your ideology on other people, or paying any cost for power. Every element of the story and character interaction furthered this message, and you can tell from the beauty of the writing, characters, and setting that they cared about what they were saying. Now, compare this to the pre-sequel's writing. There's a constant undertone of LOL, isn't this funny, my fellow woke boys? Why should we bother saying why we're right? Put effort into the story or reinforce our message? Or accurately represent the struggles of the disenfranchised? That sounds like a lot of work. I'm not saying that a comedy game has to be insanely deep and thought-provoking, but if you're going to put social commentary into your game that your audience might not agree with, put in some effort to match that. They didn't have this problem in Borderlands 2, or at least not as much. Ellie was written as a good representation of body acceptance. She has a positive self-image of herself, was funny, witty, and didn't want to lose weight just to appease other people, but took responsibility for her own life choices and the consequences that stemmed from them. In his blog posts, you can tell Anthony Birch understood this with the choice of making Axton bisexual coming from a coding error, whereas
Wow, do you work out or?
voice line when he revived Maya was played when he picked up anyone, and the writers just went with it and made him bisexual. It's cool because he was a badass soldier who just happened to swing both ways. Like how people who are LGBT in the real world have real hobbies, interests, and personalities beyond them being queer. Back to Janie Springs. She makes this her entire personality and is one of the more insufferable characters in the game. All of her lines, and lines related to her, feel preachy, surface level, and, well, cringe.
Why are we killing Deadlift again?
He's kind of a dick.
Is there anything else, or...?
Well, he also stole my Moonzoomy Digistruct key, stranded me out here, and got really rude when I told him I wasn't into guys, but mainly the being a dick thing.
Wow. That was a really funny joke, my guy. I 100% LOL laughed out loud. God, I love Bad Luck Brian. And to charge Anthony Birch by extension with the crime of being cringe, I submit to you Exhibit A from a deleted blog post of his. Yes, that would be great, but one must not forget that one shouldn't just throw in minorities for no reason. Doctor Who, Borderlands, James Bond, whatever, comes off phony when they arbitrarily start throwing minorities around just to show how progressive they are. It feels condescending and arbitrary. I'd like to make an argument to the counter-argument. So what? I've been told once or twice that the bisexual or gay characters I wrote for Borderlands 2 were arbitrary and forced. This is 100% true. I did not have any particular stories to tell about human sexuality. I just randomly chose a few characters and decided that they weren't heterosexual. I had no reason to do so other than the belief that a cast of sexually diverse characters is better than a sexually homogenous one. Did it hurt the story? Maybe. Maybe it feels arbitrary that certain female characters mention their wives, or that certain male characters just happen to have several occasions to mention their boyfriends. I'd like to think that I knew this might have been a problem when I wrote the characters in the first place, that by making the cast more diverse and drawing attention to it, I'd be making the story worse. On the upside though, and this is going to sound tremendously arrogant, but stick with me for a few more paragraphs. While arbitrarily diverse casts might make the story worse, they make the real world better. Not the in-fiction world either. I mean, you know, the world. The actual one. The one you and I are in. Real life. Unfortunately, it does not make the real world better. All Cletus married to his cousin the second sees is that you just ruined his favorite video game. I would love to live in a world where being queer was just as normal as anything else. But that's just not the world we live in. The point of art is to put your best foot forward to represent your way of thinking and challenge the assumptions of others. Representation matters. How well a character is established and developed, and how you represent their identity is incredibly important. Part of that representation is actually understanding the struggles that these groups of people go through, which I'm not so sure Anthony Birch does. The queer experience is very much riddled with shame, feeling lost and alone, the fear of self-discovery, and anxiety about showing your true self to others. These experiences are not unique to queer people. In fact, many people experience these things, but they're especially prevalent in the experiences of these communities. Because of this, you can put this journey onto a character, put it in front of an audience that isn't necessarily approving of these kinds of communities, and they walk away with a better understanding of the experiences of the group in question, even if they don't change their underlying beliefs. If you have someone's attention, you need to make your case and make it in the best way possible with the time you have. This clip is probably the best example of Anthony Birch's self-fellatiating writing style.
Oh man! Everybody's enjoying their laser weapons, and I'm just sitting around making things explode! My life sucks!
Oh, it's okay. People like explosions.
You're just saying that! People want lasers, not explosions!
No, I really do like explosions. You're great.
Really? Well, I like you now. Do you want to go out?
Sorry, I'm not into guys.
Friend zone! Yeah. Hey, is Athena telling the story about the light reactor thing? I'd like to just point out that I was in a dark place back then, and I know that friend zoning is an imaginary and misogynistic way of looking at relationships. You guys know what I mean.
Please go away, Torg.
Fair enough. Wow.
There are a few problems I have with this. First off, cringe. Second off, how actually insensitive and degrading to the struggles of men in finding relationships. It's not a good feeling when you want to pursue a romantic relationship with someone and find out that she doesn't think of you like that and just thinks of you as a friend. It's a real thing, and you just called men misogynists for feeling that way. Likewise, women get stuck in something called the fuck zone, where a man they want to be in a relationship with just calls her whenever he wants sex, but doesn't want to actually pursue a relationship with her. Do women hate men for thinking that's a real thing and not liking how it feels? Whichever answer you have should go both ways. This type of writing doesn't make the world better or bring anyone to your cause. It's needlessly divisive and antagonizes people who might otherwise be willing to hear what you have to say. All this is a contest of who can have the wokest social views rather than actually helping minorities. I'm not saying I'm perfect either. Looking back at my IGN video, there were many better ways that I could have made my argument that didn't antagonize people who disagreed with me. But I learned from that, while there are tons of writers in the industry that still just hand over talking points to dishonest commentators. How much better of a character would Janie Springs be if she was extremely outgoing, but when it came to matters with Athena, she'd be much shyer of a person and subtly drop hints with plausible deniability out of fear of how Athena would react, since she probably encountered hostility in other instances of her asking someone out. You know, character writing that's genuinely understanding of the gay experience and wants to properly represent that group instead of being cynically and performatively written. Speaking of performative, you have one point in the game where Moxie complains about Janie Springs constantly being creepy to her, playing into the homophobic stereotype that lesbians prey on straight women. I fucking hate Anthony Birch's writing. Anyway, stick your got out for the Rizzler or something. Welcome back, I knew you were tuning out. Anyway, you go on to fight a guy whose entire character is that he loves jump pads. And no, I really wish I was joking when I said that, even though that joke would probably be on par with the humor of this game.
Get bent, sir. I ain't taking orders from the dick who threw me in prison.
They said your jump pads are stupid.
I will annihilate them.
Damn, bro. That was hella funny. Laugh out loud. I love rage comics.
This game tries way too hard to be funny. But anyway, we'll expand on that later. This fight is actually awful. The entire time, the boss jumps from pad to pad, electrocutes the floor when you get close, and throws shock orbs at you while you're constantly chasing him and trying to get a hit in with early game low accuracy weapons. This fight is so slow paced and such a slog to play through.
Alright, I guess we're doing some side quests. No, I'm banging my head against the wall. We're doing this. We're making this happen. I'm not giving up. All right. We're on the Sigma male grind set. Okay. Did Patrick Bateman give up when I've never seen that movie?
The problem was that Fight for Your Life was balanced for the gameplay of Borderlands 2. With the different movement system and gravity mechanics of the pre-sequel, everything had to be further apart and multi-leveled to make the movement system feel satisfying. However, this made it very easy for you to get downed, an enemy jumps across the map away from you, and there's not dick you can do about it, so you die.
Damn. No, don't do that, man. Oh, ain't no way. Ain't no way. He did it. He did it to me. Oh, come on. Oh, I just got cucked, bro. I just got cucked. I got cucked.
You're sent to Concordia to ask Moxie for help disabling a jamming signal that's preventing Helios's defense system from being used. At this point, you'll start to notice the pacing issues. Everything feels so far apart. The quests have you doing random menial tasks for way longer than you should be, and so many times, the way forward is blocked until characters stop yapping and are done giving you their life story and social security number.
Over here? Over here. Is it over here? Oh, my bad. I didn't realize I have to wait for the dialogue to complete before I can actually, like, advance in the game. My bad. That one's on me, man. I'm sorry.
Sure, Borderlands 2 had some issues with these things, but it's nowhere near the extent of this game. This game wastes so much of your time and wants you to listen to the story like it's the next Last of Us. No, not that one. Once again, these are smaller issues with the gameplay compared to the overall great experience, but they definitely drag the game down. You soon figure out that the Marif, head of Concordia and a previous subordinate of Jack, was responsible for the signal. When Jack confronts the Marif, Jack decides to spare him, and the Marif fires when Jack turns his back. resulting in Jack killing him after he runs out of bullets in the gun and surrenders. This is your first glimpse at Jack committing a morally questionable action, but this is Borderlands, and it's far from the worst thing that one of the quote-unquote good guys has done in the series. At this point, Jack decides to build a robot army to take over Helios, and you have to enlist the help of a guy named Davis Pickle. Cutting edge comedy here, man. I sure can't wait to meet Fartmaster 69 next. So begins probably the worst mission in all of Borderlands. So this section very excessively uses what I like to call cockblock game design. What this entails is that you have an objective, you go towards that objective, you hit a roadblock, you get roadblocked on the roadblock, and the entire level, rather than revolving around you progressing the game or story, consists of you continuously trying to uncockblock yourself. If you don't believe me, here's the entire level. You try to cross the bridge, he blows up the bridge. You try to use the methane pipe to cross the lava, the methane pipe isn't working. Go to the pumping station, redirect the flow from the pumping station, dump the methane, finally getting you back to where you started. Go into Drakensberg, get blocked by a force field.
Oh, no.
Overload the engine core, get to the force field controls, and finally fight the boss. Call Sam. Sam, I do not like this fucking game when it does this shit to me. After killing him, you find out his AIGF is actually the military AI you were looking for. During this section, you'll really notice the humor present in this game. You can tell that the writers thought the humor in Borderlands 2 was what made the writing work, but that just wasn't true at all. After I played through this game, I started thinking, what makes a game that doesn't take itself seriously work? But the more I thought about it, the more I realized, wait, Borderlands 2 did take itself seriously. The main story of Borderlands 2 was generally serious, with one quip or one-liner here and there, or a joke to add some levity to a serious situation. Like when you find out that the loot you get after Roland dies is actually Marcus's stash, and you just robbed him. A lot of the quests that took themselves less seriously were generally relegated to side quests. This game tries way too hard to be funny. A joke is forced into every single moment, and it's just not necessary. The humor in 2 worked because there are a lot of things you did where you'd get 15 minutes into a quest, and the funny moments came from you taking a step back and thinking, wait, what the fuck am I even doing? Hence, this being the one funny joke in pretty much the entire game.
John, I want an update on the Helios situation. Sir, I've got my best people working on a way to...
I want the railgun.
Imperial CEO. Is he as much of a bottle and glass arse as I hear?
Always happy to...
Who the hell is that? That is the 10-year-old boy we hired to help us. You're fired, John.
The reason this is funny is because you have Jack, who's an overconfident programmer, putting you into a far-fetched plan to take back Helios, which is actually starting to all come together now. But with the way he explains it to Tassiter, it makes you take that step back and realize how ridiculous the whole situation is. The joke plays into Jack's personality and the conflict between him and Tassiter. Most of the other jokes are just haha memes, haha that's what she said, haha loud and obnoxious character, or haha isn't it funny that this character is named this funny thing? I fucking hate Anthony Birch's writing. You're tasked next with going to the robot production plant to install the AI who now named herself Felicity. You meet Gladstone, who helps you build a constructor to install Felicity into. Over time, you see that Felicity very much dislikes violence and wants you to make a copy of her since she finds the idea of being put in a constructor terrifying. Jack tells her that there's not enough time before the Lost Legion destroys Elpis and reluctantly orders the installation of Felicity into the constructor. She attacks you, so you fight to disable her and remove her personality for the greater good. Now, this is next in line for morally questionable actions that Jack takes, but it's still arguably pretty justified on an ethical level. Now that you have your robot army, you're tasked with retaking Helios. You get into Jack's office and have to rescue the researchers to shut down the shields to take control of Helios' defenses. Gladstone floats some ideas to why the Lost Legion still has control of them, one of those being a possible mole.
Dude, it's so great, like, how many arguments you can win on the internet, if you just use the nerd emoji with, like, the finger pointing up. It's just great. Some guy says some stupid shit, or, like, corrects you or whatever. You send him that nerd emoji, you just win argument instantly.
When you return to Jack's office, he releases the airlock and kills all the researchers, since one of them could be the traitor. This is a way giant leap morally for Jack being forced to wipe the personality of an AI or killing somebody in questionable self-defense. All of a sudden, he's just evil now. Man, wouldn't it be a cool story idea to watch Jack's slow moral decay as he makes choices that gradually erode his humanity until he becomes the villain you fight in Borderlands 2? Wouldn't it be interesting to have quests that you win on where you felt justified in every action you took until you reached a point where you suddenly looked back and realized, wait, I'm the bad guy. Yeah, me neither. Where's my fucking yacht? In the next section, Moxie helps you shut down Helios' laser until you eventually face off against Zarpedon in the most anticlimactic boss fight. You get a cryptic warning before Jack executes her. You find out that the Eye of Helios' power comes from the Eye of the Destroyer from the Borderlands 1 vault. Moxie tells you to activate all slag injectors, but Jack decides that you should be far away from it before you shut it down. Turns out his judgment was right. A singularity activates, and Moxie just tried to kill you. Jack has a mental breakdown after this and vows to go after the vault. The good. This section was probably my favorite part of the game. It has a diverse amount of enemies that you face, and has a lot of cool moments where Jack talks about his ideas for the enemies that you eventually face in Borderlands 2, along with some of the items you see him use in the game. The bad. What a terrible villain. So, what's the ideal objective of a villain? The ideal villain in a story holds up a mirror to the protagonist, challenging them in unique ways that no other character in the story can. Whether it be fundamental moral beliefs, abilities that only this character has, or through some shared history with the protagonist, you want the villain to be a complex and unique threat that the hero of the story must overcome some core aspect of themselves in order to win. You have no characterization for Zarpedon other than, bro, trust me man, like, you can't open the vault, dude. I'm destroying this moon for the greater good, my guy. I saw the future. The game makes sure to say it multiple times out loud in case you were too stupid to get it. The ideal scenario for a villain in this game is to challenge Jack morally until he reaches the point where he needs to cast away those morals to win, becoming Handsome Jack in the process. There is no way Zarpedon directly challenges Jack. Jack's moral corruption feels rushed and forced, and Zarpedon has hardly any characterization at all. Wouldn't it be cool if Zarpedon was an ex-mercenary who did horrible things in the name of Dahl, encountered the vault, saw the future, and decided she would seek redemption by stopping Jack? Throughout the game, she could engage in the unethical and dishonorable tactics she used as a mercenary. Jack would slowly need to become more and more depraved in his actions until the character he started as is unrecognizable in order to win. In trying to save the world, Zarpedon would doom it to Handsome Jack. In trying to do the right thing, Handsome Jack would end up becoming the villain you would see in Borderlands 2, a moral defeat for both characters. But the writers just kind of decided to end up skipping all of the build-up to there. Thanks, Anthony Birch. What's he working on now, anyway? Anyway, you go on to look for the vault as Jack becomes more and more unhinged in wanting to find it, asking you to kill an unarmed soldier and to destroy the Legion ship, even though your character tells him that he could just rush to the vault. Man, remember how all flying enemies that are constantly moving around are always the worst enemy in every single Borderlands game? How about a boss like that? He's constantly flying around and being annoyingly hard to hit and high in the sky. In the bunker fight in Borderlands 2, it at least stopped every once in a while so that you could get some damage in. Not here. Keep using those jump pads and chasing around the map, pal. You eventually make your way to the vault, and the last area looks pretty sick. The final fight is fine. It's a pretty fun fight, but doesn't involve nearly as much strategy as the warrior from Borderlands 2. One thing that's unforgivable, though, is that the game makes you watch every single time as he emerges from the ground if you die in the fight. And they still have you watch the 500-second respawn animation too. Why? Why? After the final battle, the vault gives Jack a vision of the future, showing him the warrior. Lilith punches the relic into Jack's face, trying to stop this, now bridging the gap between Borderlands 1 and 2. To call Borderlands The Pre-Sequel a cash grab is not entirely accurate. Somewhat, but not entirely. As many jokes as I've made in the video about it, you can tell this is a very well-crafted game made by people who cared, but you can't deny the impact that the success of the previous games had on it. A smaller budget, Anthony Burch's overconfidence off of the success of 2, heightened expectations from fans, a short development window, and the studio not having the clout that Gearbox did to push against the more unsavory ideas from executives resulted in something great, but not groundbreaking, which was the expectation for the series at this point. The reason why the pre-sequel represents the start of the downward spiral of the series is that the cracks from Borderlands 2 began to be filled in the worst way possible. There's a quote from John Carmack, co-founder of id Software, who said, "Story in a game is like story in a porn movie. It's expected to be there, but it's not that important." I think this captures a common sentiment in the video game community. However, I'd say that this sentiment is mistaken about the idea of what video games are and what they can be. Why is it that we don't remember games like Final Fantasy VII, The Last of Us, or Silent Hill mostly for their gameplay, but the story that they tell? Sure, you need to have good gameplay for a good video game, but the best and most memorable games manage to blend their story and gameplay seamlessly. There's a reason that the pre-sequel was made, and Handsome Jack is a recurring character in multiple titles past this one, even though he's dead. People love to hate Handsome Jack because he's a great villain. Video games absolutely benefit from good writing, and the entire experience is that much more memorable for it. The problem with the pre-sequel was that it was a game that had a lot of cynicism behind it. The executives wanted money, Anthony Burch wanted to shoehorn in his beliefs without regard how it would affect the story, and fans wanted more Borderlands. This resulted in lazy, uninspired writing that had a goal in mind and didn't care how it got there. The characters were shallow, the jokes were forced, the memes were bad, and the story was rushed. All of the writing that made you genuinely care about what you were doing in Borderlands 2 was gone, replaced with what they thought Borderlands was. Instead of being a passion project poking fun at the greed of corporations that basically made executives at 2K be forced to make fun of themselves for profit, this is where the executives took that power back. Now, instead of being anything substantive, Borderlands became a parody of itself, an empty vessel for Anthony Burch's activism and corporate greed, neither of which cared what was at the core of Borderlands. I'm not trying to imply anybody involved is a horrible human or anything. It's just disappointing to see the quality of writing go from Borderlands 2 to this, and I wish I could say it got better. If you've paid any attention to Randy Pitchford's new cult leader fit and hairline, you'd know that the general consensus among Borderlands fans is that Borderlands 3's gameplay is the best the series has put out up to this point. But its story reads like a mix between the writing of fanfiction and the comedy style of Joe Rogan's latest stool impregnation fantasy that he calls a Netflix special. And that is mostly true. Now, if I agree with the general sentiment out there, why am I making this video? Most of the discussions I see on Borderlands 3 talk about the gameplay being great and the story and characters being awful, but don't talk about the bigger picture surrounding it. What happens when a series starts to lose sight of where it started, and its identity crisis is so bad it starts to affect the gameplay experience? So join me as we deep dive into Borderlands 3, and if the writing was really as bad as everyone says it is. A month after the release of the pre-sequel, Telltale Games released a story-oriented spin-off named Tales from the Borderlands, starring Troy Baker as the Hyperion employee Reese as you follow him in his misadventures on Pandora. It's a legitimately hilarious and well-written adventure that starkly contrasts how rushed the writing was in the pre-sequel. Definitely worth a play if you're into that sort of thing. Between this and 2019, not much happened besides Gearbox deciding to add Battleborn to their list of games that make humanity's case for existing much weaker, to join Aliens Colonial Marines and Duke Nukem Forever. In March 2019, the game was announced, and fans were ready for the next true Borderlands installment. To fill in the gap between Tales from the Borderlands and Borderlands 3, a new DLC, Commander Lilith and the Fight for Sanctuary, was released in June of 2019. This DLC follows Lilith as she struggles to fill in the hole left in the Crimson Raiders after Roland's death, with a villain that's written relatively well, and manages to challenge Lilith to become the leader the Crimson Raiders need. To Gearbox's credit, they also announced that Borderlands 3 would be completed without mandatory overtime, or what the industry calls crunch. While this is admirable, in theory, it says nothing about eliminating the social pressure to work these hours, which would create a crunch culture in the workplace. Up to the launch, Gearbox managed to stay out of trouble and rode the wave of hype to the September release. Nah, I'm just kidding. It was actually soon announced that 2 voice actors, Troy Baker, the voice of Reese, and David Eddings, the voice of Claptrap, would not return for their roles in Borderlands 3. In response to somebody inquiring about Troy Baker not returning, Randy Pitchford made a detailed and well thought out public statement. Nah, I'm just kidding again. He hopped on Twitter and said Baker turned the role down. When Troy Baker caught wind of Pitchford's comment, he responded that Pitchford should fact check before he tweets out to the internet, which is just kind of good advice in general. It was soon revealed that Troy Baker wouldn't be making a return because Gearbox refused to sign a contract with SAG-AFTRA, the union representing Baker. Gearbox responded by claiming Texas law prevented them from making hiring decisions based on union or non-union status, implying that somehow this law prevented them from being able to hire him, which doesn't make any sense. SAG-AFTRA responded by claiming that they did not require workers to be unionized for the project, just that everyone working on it would be guaranteed the same basic standards. When David Eddings announced that he would not be returning due to insisting he be paid for his performance, Randy Pitchford said to a random Twitter user once again that Eddings was given a quote-unquote relatively generous offer, which isn't really a way you word something to spark a lot of confidence in your position. He later followed up to say Eddings was offered a 2-times scale for his work and was just an ex-employee disgruntled about being fired. Eddings claimed that this offer was never made to him. At this point, the floodgates opened, as Eddings alleged that after hearing an offer was being made to buy Gearbox and discussing it with Pitchford, he was physically assaulted and fired a few days later after refusing to give up the source who told him this, evidenced by the text messages between the two. While this is a he said situation, one person is a known liar and barely legal squirt porn enjoyer, don't worry, we'll get to that, and the other gave up his job to protect a source from retaliation. Eventually, the game was released, and people forgot, because they always do. Listen, I took out my wallet too. I'm not saying I'm above it either. Borderlands 3 release, and did they add some new mechanics? The new movement felt fresh, with the ability to slide and kick barrels at enemies. The action skills of the Vault Hunters could now be customized to fit your playstyle, and manufacturers now have their own alternate firing mode, making each feel more distinct and unique from the other. Radiation damage was added to the game, and Cryo came back. Radiation is effective against shields, and Cryo is good against armor. Still, both less so than Shock and Corrosive, respectively. But they do normal damage against regular health bars. This is the best Borderlands has ever felt to play, especially with the crispness of the firing sounds, and the sizzle, crack, and pop when you light people on fire is just beautiful. And the quality of life is so good. No longer do you have to loot and sell item rarities that take up inventory space. You can just turn them into money on pickup. You can change quest objectives with the click of a button, refill health or ammo with one key press, and when you play multiplayer, you can create instance loot and enemies scaled to the level of each player so you can play along with a friend even if they're ahead of you in levels. This is an excellent addition because, yeah, one of the most significant barriers between you and playing with friends before was needing a whole new playthrough or one person grinding to the point where the other player was at before you could ever play with each other. I'm not going to do a deep dive into the intro, but it fixed a lot of the complaints I had with the pre-sequel, and clearly showed what each character was about. Flak uses beasts to help him out, Mose is the tanky soldier who rides in a mech, Amara is the siren with a more aggressive playstyle than previous sirens, and Zane is the cocky trickster assassin. The intro is good at establishing the playstyle and personality of each character you play as. The game starts with Lilith giving you a mission to clear out the Children of the Vault camp, which is the main threat you face. You're told they managed to bring all of the bandits on Pandora under one banner. You clear out the hideout and hear the Sun Smashers are being targeted, and you have to help them. You meet Vaughn, leader of the Sun Smashers and corporate accountant turned bandit from Tales from the Borderlands, and are tasked with taking down the Holy Broadcast Center where the Children of the Vault spread their propaganda. Yeah, gameplay-wise, I remember this being I remember having so much fun with it, and having more fun than any other Borderlands game, because I feel like the gameplay gets better every single Borderlands. Although with the replayability, I feel like Borderlands 2 did that best, because they had True Vault Hunter, Ultimate Vault Hunter, Skibidi Toilet Vault Hunter, and like they just had like all these extra modes and like all these extra. You fight Mouthpiece, and you can tell they put some work into the bosses in this game. You have to dodge the speaker blast, hit him while he's open, all while loud electronic music plays in the background. The environmental hazards and flashing lights add such a fun dimension to this battle. But that's where my praise of this section ends, because right after you meet the Calypso twins. In this game, the writers set out to ask the question of what would happen if you had the most douchey streamers in existence with a psycho cult following. But they don't answer or expand on it. It's just a haha funny quirk of the shallow and one-dimensional villains, but we'll get to that later too. You get the vault key, bring it to Tanis, and fight off some bandits before you're tasked with going to Promethea to find the vault. While getting the ship ready to launch, Lilith is attacked by the Calypso twins, with Tyreen taking her powers, and leaving her alive for some reason. This is one of my many significant issues with this game's writing. Nobody actually acts like a real person. Listen, I know the reasonable move for a non-fridge temperature IQ human being when they have the leader of the most threatening faction against them, who took down the quadrillionaire head of Hyperion at their mercy, would be to kill them right then and there. But listen, man, that would mean we'd have to write creative ways for characters to escape from hairy situations. And that, oh boy, that sounds like a lot of work. It feels like the lesson the writers took from Handsome Jack as a villain was literally just create a smug character and have them taunt you throughout the game and miss every single part about what made Handsome Jack a great antagonist. Handsome Jack was a good villain because, yes, at the beginning of the game, he didn't take you super seriously, but he was also up in Helios running an intergalactic corporation, so it makes sense that he just throws some money at some bandits in hopes they kill you because he has better things to do than just deal with some mercenaries. Later, when you join up with the Crimson Raiders, he starts to throw more time and resources your way since you're now part of the leading organization being a thorn in his side. After you kill Wilhelm and get the power core to take down Sanctuary shields, it turns out that it didn't matter whether you lived or died in the cold, since Jack was always a step ahead with Angel at his side. Throughout the game, you see the gradual increase in the allocation of resources Hyperion uses against you, with elite soldiers calling out your abilities, showing that they've been briefed on what you're capable of. It never feels like Jack is holding back, but using what he believes to be reasonable tactics for each situation. A villain respecting your strength not only makes you feel good as a player, but also makes the antagonist feel more dangerous. It shows they have enough intelligence and awareness of their capabilities to evaluate situations and still believe that they'll come out ahead. The reason Troy and Tyreen suck as villains is that literally every single strategy from them that they employ is just to walk in and use their siren powers. Sorry, I know that was pretty complicated. Let me explain their tactics throughout the game again, in case you didn't catch their Mossad agent level strategies. They walk in and use their siren powers. Sometimes you might even get an ass pull. This isn't necessarily a bad thing in writing, and it's very common for villains to be much more powerful than the protagonist at the story's beginning. Otherwise, you wouldn't really have anything to work towards. The problem is that the writers are too lazy to A, figure out creative ways that the Crimson Raiders come up with to avoid facing the Calypso twins head on, and B, have villains do everything in their power to cripple their opponent and not act like total morons when they get the opportunity. As much of a smug douche Handsome Jack was, he would never, ever just leave a threat to him alive for literally no reason. It's not like the writers are incapable of writing creative solutions to problems. I thought that this section where you lift the airlock to put out a fire was really cute and creative and took advantage of the spaceship setting to solve a unique problem you were facing. Echo Classic, Birthday Dog. Oh my god, look at that guy, look how silly he is. Oh my god. Look at how silly that guy is, bro. You get up to the ship and run into some turbulence and are tasked with helping some people. This is the game's way of giving you a tour of the convoluted design of the spaceship. I don't know why they just couldn't have ladders and stairs in the same spot to go between floors instead of having stairs and ladders all around the place for you to get lost, even when you're 20 hours into the game, because the design of the hub is just that bad. This design is just so complicated and confusing for no reason. I feel like a rat in a maze being studied every time I try to accept a side quest. Why design it like this? Anyway, you arrive on Promethea and see Atlas, now run by Reese from Tales, in a battle for its existence against Malawan, who's now working with the Children of the Vault. You're tasked with killing Gigamind alongside Zero to get more information on the Vault, and have Reese agree to help you find it. You return to the ship, give the info to Lilith, and travel to Athenas to help Maya defend the monastery from Malawan. There was one line that irked me a bit from this section that underlies the philosophy with the writing.
Coast's clear. When we're not at war, the bells of peace ring all hours of the day and night. Kind of a nightmare, honestly.
So you have monks who are pacifists, don't seem to have any sort of governmental body to protect them and ensure that they have their peace and can follow their tenets. They have bells they ring all day to announce to the world that they're at peace instead of using the bells to alert to attacks. You can say that they'll know about an attack if the bell stops ringing, but the advantage of a bell is that you can tell the direction the sound is coming from and where the threat is. Also, if they ring the bell at night, wouldn't this be the easiest civilization to execute stealth missions against? How do these people survive? And don't tell me a single siren is enough to defend them, because why are you here? Instead of actually thinking about these questions and building out the faction of the monks of Athenas, they throw world building out the window for a joke that isn't even funny.
Boy's about to get cooked, figuratively and literally. See, that's Borderlands-like humor right there. All right, I did a Borderlands joke there. And then, like, you immediately gotta explain it. It's funny because, like, I just used a fire weapon on him, and he died because he was ice. And so, and cooked. By cooked, generally people mean that, like, he got fucked over and he got fucked up. And since I used a fire weapon on him, both figuratively and literally, he got cooked. See, that's the type of humor that's in this game. Okay, it's just, oh god. It's just like, okay, like, bro, like, I get it. We don't need to explain, like, every stage of the joke. Like, first, it wasn't funny. 2, cringe. 3, stop. What's even happening here?
We eventually meet Ava, who it seems the entire Borderlands community blames for the writing being garbo, but honestly, I don't think she's really that bad, and the writing has way worse problems than her. After getting the vault key from Athenas, you're sent to Skywell 27 to destroy Katagawa's laser, who's head of mergers and acquisitions at Malawan. Throughout this section, it seems like they totally just butchered Reese's character. In Tales, Reese is an awkward guy with ambition who's highly competent, cares about the people around him, and tries to do the right thing when he can. In Borderlands 3, he's just a bumbling buffoon who manages to hack things sometimes, but would be useless without the Vault Hunters. There were so many funny interactions I would have liked to see Tales Reese have with the main cast, but we got Borderlands 3 Reese instead. This is also one of the downsides to not rehiring actors to play their characters from previous games. They have a better understanding of that character than sometimes even the writers, and can push back on some decisions where the character would do something that doesn't fit with who they are. I don't really see Tales Reese having deep emotional connections to bagel shops, water parks, and frozen yogurt stands, and missing the bigger picture about the situation. Sure, Tales Reese might have been annoyed about the situation, but would be much more concerned about the well-being of the shop owners' livelihoods and the people who Malawan is hurting. One part of this section that serves as an example of how many missed opportunities with the writing there are is the Reese ball. It also shows my issues with the joke structure in this game as well. Here, Reese finds a sex robot ball and uses it to hack doors for you. It ends with a section where he's playing smooth music while you're fighting off Malawan soldiers. Now, this could be a funny situational comedy bit, but the execution here is just bad. All that the comedy is in this section is that Reese picks the sex bot and decides to play silly music during a shootout. The problem is that instead of gradually building towards this outcome and having a funny moment, it just feels like a lot of random XD humor due to not having any setup or build-up. Let's take this scene from Tucker and Dale vs. Evil as an example of setup and build-up. So the main crux of the comedy of this movie is being a parody of the killer targeting teens on vacation horror movie genre. You have a group of college kids taking a trip out to the country, and these 2 guys who have a cabin in the area are misunderstood by the group as being unhinged killers when in reality, they're just weird regular dudes. In this scene, you have Tucker chainsawing a log as you hear buzzing in the background while the college kids send someone over to sneak by. This is the setup. You have the chainsaw, the bees, and the two characters in proximity to one another. The scene continues with Tucker cutting into the nest and having a swarm of bees chase after him. He screams "run for your lives" to the kid sent by the group while waving his chainsaw in the air. The comedy comes from the opposing characters' motivations, the misunderstandings, the interactions with the environment, and the payoff with all of those pieces coming together for this one scene. Borderlands 3 does not do this. It would have been at least a joke if the entire mission you were searching for the right death sphere and finally found something suitable in, let's say, Katagawa's degenerate sex dungeon, using it as your last resort after finding out some things you wish you didn't know about him. It could be glitchy and have various malfunctions throughout the mission, which Reese uses to his advantage in certain sections to help you out. Then it finally ends like it did in the game with the music, but it being a malfunction of the robot rather than a deliberate weird decision for Reese to make. It wouldn't be anything legendary, but at least it would be a joke. It would tell you more about Katagawa's character and shows Reese's ability to adapt to situations, and that he's CEO of a company for a reason. This isn't necessarily even a funny joke, but this is at least the basic structure of a joke. And the writers of a comedy game don't understand this. The section ends with a boss fight and Reese destroying Katagawa's pleasure yacht with the laser and decommissioning the weapon while you grab the vault key fragment. Reese then tells you he has the last fragment of the vault key with him at Atlas headquarters. When you reach Atlas headquarters, Malawan attacks you while Reese hides from Zero trying to kill him. After reaching Reese, you find out it was actually Katagawa dressed up like Zero. One boss fight later, you defeat Katagawa and get the vault key. When you return to the ship, Maya volunteers to help you open the vault and tells Ava to stay on Sanctuary despite her protests. You drive to Apollyon Station and take the tunnel down to the vault where you fight the Rampager. Ava shows up, you loot the vault, and the Calypsos do their signature strat of showing up to confront you directly because nobody actually planned for them to appear or kept an eye on Ava. It's already established at this point that she constantly disobeys Maya. Why not? Watch her. Of course, Maya dies during this scene because the writers are incapable of moving the plot forward without somebody being a moron, incompetent, or both. One cool part about this scene, though, was that it showed Troy being more of a mysterious and intimidating villain than you thought he was before. I had a genuine feeling of the guy being dangerous after this scene, even though they left the book and didn't even think to look inside the vault to kill you either. See what I'm saying? Do you see what I'm saying? The group then gets together in a semicircle to say goodbye to Maya. Ava gets mad and blames Maya's death on Lilith, and nobody ever gives a shit or cares about Maya dying after that. Bro, what?
Oh, we're so sorry to hear about your
siren.
Passed away. She gets 5 big booms. Boom! 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 Boom!
Let's compare that to an actual, well-written death in the series. Throughout the story in Borderlands 2, you're constantly on the defensive, either defending yourself from Hyperion attacks, going under the radar to help your allies, or gathering strength and resources in minor skirmishes. It makes you feel like you're in a war that you're losing. You eventually muster up the allies and resources to have your first significant confrontation with Hyperion. You make it past an impenetrable death wall, an invincible bunker, and a door which only opens for Handsome Jack, and find out that the siren helping you throughout the game was actually Jack's daughter, who he was exploiting to further his own power. Even though Roland told Lilith to stay back, Lilith still helps you during the fight and is vital to the mission's success. After killing Angel, Roland lets his guard down and Jack shoots him in the back and kidnaps Lilith. When you arrive back at Sanctuary, you see Roland's impact on everyone in the city and the hole left behind now that he's gone. The build up to this made the mission feel treacherous, with the missions you had to go on beforehand and the elite new soldiers you fight along the way. The fights feel epic with the army of buzzards behind you. It developed Lilith as a leader, showing that she did have better judgment of the situation than Roland, made you hate Handsome Jack more after seeing him kill the leader of the Crimson Raiders and witness what he would do to even his own daughter for power. And finally, it showed you that victory comes at a cost. Every single part of this mission built up the story, world, and characters. It didn't tear them down. Now let's take a look at Maya's death. Sure, you kind of build towards the moment by getting the vault key fragments, but all there is in the vault is just the coordinates of another vault, and you obtain nothing of value to the story other than a plot device to direct the characters towards Eden 6. Tyreen absorbs the vault monster, and it makes literally no difference to the story that she does it. Maya dies because all of the elite soldiers on a professionally operated spacecraft are unable to keep track of a fucking teenager. But don't worry, it's alright because the villains are lobotomites that are unable to take out anything that could pose a threat to them in the future. Also, there can be a 45-second funeral scene with an unfunny joke that makes you hate everyone involved in the dialogue, the game's development, and you being born on planet Earth to witness this dogshit story. The worst part is, I feel like I'm being mocked. Look at this deleted scene. It's not just good writing for a character death, but great writing for a character death by the same writers. I just don't understand. Why not include this scene in the game? Why did you leave it out? If you haven't seen this is an animatic that was left out of the final game because reasons. And they decided to go with the abomination that was included in the final game.
It's my fault. I got her killed.
It's gonna feel like that for a while, but it's not true. We both know Maya. She was always willing to risk her life for something that mattered.
Then why did she waste it on me?
Maya saw something in you. She believed in what you're going to become. She wanted to light the way for you when she was gone.
She used to tell me all about what you did on Pandora. About the Firehawk. She said you always ran toward the fire. You sounded like everything I ever wanted to be. Someone strong. A leader with a whole army at my back. Invincible.
None of us are, Ava.
Yeah, I know.
Anyway, sounds like Maya left out a lot. I made my share of screw-ups. Running toward the fire all the time gets you burned.
But you never got anyone killed.
I did. Someone I cared about.
Oh.
This scene is perfect. You have Ava's outburst, characters reacting in their own way to the situation that reflects their personalities, a special area the characters go to for Maya's send-off, and Lilith and Ava reconciling in a way that builds up both of their characters by having them relate to each other through their guilt of feeling that they got someone killed, rather than tearing them down as characters. I don't understand. The devs will make me sit there while the objective is pending and characters are yapping about shit I don't care about. Why not include one more cutscene? Is this a good time to mention this? You know what? Yeah, it's a great time to mention this. Oh my god. This game makes me wait while characters are talking all the time. I like to deem this the game design concept of kid-yapping. See, isn't it funny how I combine the word kidnapping with yapping? Don't you feel your intelligence insulted because the joke is that I explain the joke? Yup, that's Borderlands humor for you. Now, you might think that the point of the Echo broadcasting the voice of a quest giver was to make it so that you could play the game while consuming the story, but you'd be wrong and stupid. It's actually so you can listen to a character spew exposition that the writers were too lazy to write in a creative way from a distance, so you can come back when you're 30 miles away after running off to where you think the following waypoint will be. But instead, the next objective is actually just to talk to the same person again because there's a second talk to or give item objective for the same character after they finish speaking the first time, you stupid fucking bastard. As the Egyptians built the pyramids and the Romans built the Colosseum, so too did Gearbox build optimized gameplay cuckoldry. Why actually play the game while listening to the creatively bankrupt script when you can solely just tune into this abortion of a fucking plot? It's not like you have better things to do with your life. You like epic memes and fart jokes, Raffle Lamau XD. Why don't you consume more, you fucking idiot? I sure would like to see the story that dives into the cult dynamics and how leaders are able to rise up, seize power, and have ultra-loyal underlings who will do anything for them because the leader has a high level of social insight and can identify the areas and insecurities of their followers that they can fill through ultimate cult loyalty. That sure would be a cool villain that we didn't get, and instead had the writers go, haha, hold on, wouldn't it be funny if we had a Siren streamer? Wow, so epic and hilarious, 420 bong hits, Michael Bay's Skibbity Toilet. How did they get millions of cult followers? LOL, they play video games. Oh my god, I still have half the video game and the DLC left. You travel to Eden 6, and Wainwright Jacobs asks for help dealing with the cringe of the vault. You meet the rest of the squad and rescue Hammerlock so he can say the most offensive line in the entire game.
Aurelia is one of the wealthiest creatures in the galaxy, but do not be fooled by the fine furs and priceless jewels she wears. She has the heart of a bandit.
Okay, so I just want to jump down here.
She believes in nothing but herself. If she had the charisma of Tyreen or the cunning of Troy, she would have started her own cult long ago.
First off, the #1 rule of writing is to show, not tell. Please stop telling me what the characters' personalities are like. If the writing is good and you have confidence in it, I shouldn't need NPCs telling me about who a character is. Tyreen is not charismatic. I don't know why anyone would actually want to listen to her, much less be a mindless cultist of her. I would rather give my eternal loyalty to Shoe Nice.
Basically, this is the 2 liquid ass bottles in under a minute.
Troy is not cunning. In the very next scene, he has the chance to kill you right then and there and has a monologue long enough for Wainwright to just shoot him. It never feels like these villains have a grand vision, any real plan, clear motivations, or anything of redeeming value going for them. They're characters that only have the motivation of, I want to do whatever I want and have unlimited power. Wow, what a unique and captivating villain with so much depth. They even picked the perfect overused faction to go along with it. That's right. If you're too lazy to think of why anyone would have a following behind them, just make it a cult. That way, you don't have to actually think about how characters would act rationally in situations, have them have a sense of self-preservation, or have any of their actions make sense or line up with any understanding or expectation of human behavior in general. I understand this is a Borderlands game. I understand that every single video game doesn't need an Oscar-winning script, okay? But I think it's reasonable to at least expect the bare minimum level of thought and care into the world and characters. This feels like we got the dollar store ChatGPT version of Borderlands 2's script. It feels like they just looked at Borderlands 2 and said, okay, so this game had a smug villain, the death of a beloved character, and humor. How about we just do all of that without thinking of how any of it fit together in the previous game? I don't want to make it sound like you can't write a cult in interesting ways, because you can. Cults are very much real things that exist, and allow evil people to take advantage of the weaknesses of the human mind. That is what a cult is, which is why it's so frustrating to me that very few games get it right. This kind of behavior is the essence of evil. Manipulation and exploitation of the people who are most vulnerable and just want somewhere to belong and escape the suffering of their lives. But actually, LOL, Minecraft Let's Plays! Eden 6 is basically just the anime filler arc section of the game, leading to the most important part of the story. No, not the vault. The Ice-T cameo, who turns out to be the MacGuffin that allows you to find the vault after a section where you navigate a bad robot breakup. Kill me! You get some vault key fragments, kill Aurelia in a pretty sick boss fight, and get an actually good Borderlands joke when Hammerlock talks about Wainwright being cranky when he gets shot. The joke works because it reveals more about his character as someone that isn't afraid to get in the line of fire, shows that behind the scenes, there are a lot of shenanigans that the two get up to, and builds the world as an unforgiving place that even CEOs are getting caught up in these situations.
Like, that's dirty, bro. They put two really good abilities right next to each other. I have to choose between a shit ton of damage or lifesteal. And you know your boy's gonna change You open the vault and start the most painful boss fight in the game. Master's attack pattern, raise your firstborn son to adulthood,
finally get through the boss's health bar, and Tannis deploys a device that prevents Tyreen from absorbing the monster's power. Tannis gets kidnapped by Troy, and you have to go to Carnivora to rescue her from her public execution by celebrity cameo number 2, Pain and Terror, played by Penn and Teller, that you know Magic's still learning multiplication tables when he was learning how to traumatize Alien fan squirt porn enjoyer Randy Pitchford told the team to put in the game. You fight your way to the base, have probably the coolest boss fight in the game, and find out Tannis inherited Angel's siren powers. In 2011, Macklemore released a song called Wings. The song tells a story of the rapper always getting the latest pair of shoes, living his childhood with the lie told to him that having this brand of Nikes or Air Maxes would make him just like the basketball pros. Eventually, he knew someone who was killed and robbed for them, and realized that as he grew up, he was just fed a false identity and promises for money, encapsulated by the last line of the song, that they were just another pair of shoes. This didn't stop the NBA from using this song to promote their All-Star game in 2013, conveniently with the criticisms of American consumerism cut out, of course. Now, this isn't going to be a rant talking about how evil capitalism is. The world is more complicated than that. This is only to say that capitalism, or at the very least, American-style capitalism, is very efficient at selling identities to people at a premium, and taking criticisms of itself and warping them into another product that can be sold. Just search Che Guevara on Amazon, and you'll know exactly what I mean. So what does this have to do with Borderlands? When Borderlands was created, it set out to criticize corporate power, short-sighted greed, shallow marketing, blatant dishonesty and hollow promises, and identities and lives that were dedicated to megacorps that don't care about you. Here we are though, with a game made by a studio with a CEO that allegedly steals bonuses from staff when Gearbox pays rates that are below the industry average when employee bonuses at the company are what make up for that. Fluff is added to the game solely for celebrity cameos, Randy Pitchford blatantly lies about microtransactions not being in the game and refuses to take responsibility for not saying loot box instead. Yeah, why would we fuck him on this? Gearbox refuses to work with unions, lies about it like they think you're stupid, and the game is written with Sonic fanfiction tier storytelling that doesn't bother to build the universe or characters, and in fact, just makes everything in the Borderlands lore worse. I don't think I've seen a bigger perversion of what a series set out to do. Celebrity cameos or roles are not a bad thing in video games on their own. I get it. Games need to be marketed, and you need to add some things to make people pay attention. That's just reality. As an example of a celebrity cameo done well, casting Keanu Reeves for Johnny Silverhand in Cyberpunk 2077 was great. He contributed to the cyberpunk genre massively by starring in The Matrix and Johnny Mnemonic. Johnny Silverhand is shown to be this larger-than-life legend, and having Keanu Reeves play him makes you in the real world see him the same way since you know him as a celebrity actor. This is how casting a celebrity can actually enhance the art because you recognize them as such. My problem lies in designing a game around this casting without any thought behind it. The Balak section and the Penn and Teller arc are solely there to add padding to the runtime and do nothing to enhance the gameplay or story experience besides a cool boss fight. And don't get me started on Randy Pitchford. Randy Pitchford represents everything I hate about social media while we're on the topic of shallow marketing. As everyone's lives have become increasingly present to the outside world, that too has now included those of insecure CEOs. There's this romantic idea of being a CEO pushed out to the world, that you're the boss, everything you say goes, and you're super epic, bro. This has led to the rise of the man-child social media CEO. You do what you want, say what you want, ignore valid criticism as just haters who are jelly of your success, and caring about anything or other people is turbo beta and bot behavior, homie. These are not real leaders. Randy Pitchford is constantly caught saying and doing stupid shit. not taking responsibility for his actions, mistreating his employees, and just being a sleaze in general. Only a CEO can take sensitive documents and lose them in medieval times, of course included with his videos of squirting cam girls, and still have a job at the end of the day with probably the worst excuse I've seen someone ever make. I need to read this to you. He confirmed that he copied a specific video to his memory stick to, as he describes it, work out the method of how a cam girl host faked the act of female ejaculation. I realized this is not a sex worker, Pitchford said on the show. This is a fucking magician. Do this at your job. I dare you. He never has to worry about job security, he never has to worry about his words hurting the company, and he never has to feel the consequences of his actions. That would be the job of the employees under him who get laid off when the company isn't doing well. This lack of care and empathy towards other people was most evident when he was asked if Borderlands 4 would be $80, to which he then said that real fans would find a way to pay for it if it were. That's right, you're paycheck to paycheck, not a real fan. Got laid off? Not a real fan. And this is coming from the guy who made the video defending games going up in price. It's not just what he said, it's the general lack of caring to think about other people's situations and how they would interpret what you're saying that gets to me. How pathetic is it that there are employees under him that have to think, damn, what kind of stupid childish shit is my CEO going to tweet out today that could possibly hurt the company enough to cost me my job?
Oh, this is cool. This is the first dollar that Gearbox made when we got our first check for our first thing. I pulled $1 out and I put it in that frame. It reminds me, of course, that it's a business. It's like we love creating entertainment, but if we don't at least make as much money as we spend, then we don't get to keep going. And I also feel a deep responsibility to all the people here whose livelihoods I'm responsible for. So we have to remember that.
Is this really what we want to strive for as people? How about instead, we learn to grow the fuck up, take some criticism, hop off Twitter, and run your fucking company if you're too inept to give a public statement without saying some dumb shit? Back to the story, you try to take the fight to the Calypsos, but some turrets stop you. You find Tannis' secret lab and get an iridium amplifier, allowing Tannis to take down the turrets. Now it's time for the final assault as you fight to the Great Vault. Having the Atlas soldiers fighting alongside you is a nice touch, making your actions feel a bit more impactful. You take down Troy, and Ava gets Maya's powers back from him. Wait, why can't Lilith touch Tyreen and regain her powers? Oh, that's right, because the Crimson Raiders can't make sure their enemy is dead either. Tyreen gets up, thinks she kills the three, and once again doesn't make sure that her most significant threat is actually dead, or that it would be a good idea to take the vault key. You're contacted by the first vault hunter Typhon DeLeon and find out Pandora is actually the Great Vault, and the destroyer from Borderlands 1 is still alive, with Tyreen wanting to absorb its power. The vault gives you an artifact that allows you to translate the Iridian language. You go to Necrodefeo, which is legendary for some reason, even though you have never heard of it throughout the series up to this point. You meet Typhon DeLeon and need 4 vault keys to open the Great Vault. You're sent out to find the last key. Don't think about how Malawan is here, and it was still in question whether Necrodefeo existed or not. You get the bridge gets destroyed, and you have to find another way around sequence once again. Fight the other General Tron, and Typhon talks about how his wife died, and he had to raise his 2 kids alone. You discover his kids were Troy and Tyreen, but he was overprotective of them, and they ended up evil. I wish there was a bit more to flesh them out as villains, and by a bit more, I mean anything at all. After getting the vault key, you open the Great Vault while Tyreen yaps about wanting to be the biggest star in the universe because she has daddy issues and just leaves everyone alive after she kills Typhon DeLeon in a scene that you totally care about. Oh no. Wow, I really wish they had spent the time for character development on a character death we actually cared about. I wonder when they could have done that. Tyreen absorbs the destroyer and you fight the game's final boss alongside the greatest ally you could ask for, Yellow Paint. After you beat her, you find out Elpis is about to tear Pandora apart, but Lilith gets her powers back, makes Ava in charge of Sanctuary despite being 15 and showing no leadership capabilities up to this point, and Judgment that got Maya killed, and crashes into the moon. this is the first time I've played a video game where my gameplay experience was actually downgraded by how bad the story was. We need to get rid of the idea that storytelling is not relevant to gameplay. It is. We're human. We connect with stories, and weight is added to every part of the game you play when you actually care about what's happening, and it's not just another section with more enemies. There are so many moments in the games we play that just wouldn't be the same if there weren't good writers behind them. Games aren't Pong anymore. We aren't limited by the technology we have at the time, and can make something that's so much more than just a board or sports game brought to a screen. This game is worse off in every single way for having a bad story. Moxie's Heist of the Handsome Jackpot is the first DLC of Borderlands 3, where you help Moxie take over Handsome Jack's casino, which was thrown into chaos after his death, with everyone being trapped there. I like stories like this. It's really cool to have a whole DLC that results from some side project that Handsome Jack was working on. It shows the extent of how far-reaching the consequences of Hyperion's power were, and that the effects are still present even after 7 years. Once you enter the casino, you see the place is run by someone named Pretty Boy. You arrive at the strip and hear a call for help, which turns out to be Timothy Lawrence, the Handsome Jack clone you played as in the pre-sequel. He helps you throughout the DLC while trying too hard to impress Moxie. You meet Ember to recruit her as the heist explosives expert, find out from her that the casino is rigged to keep all inhabitants as debt slaves for life, recruit Freddy as the robotics expert, and get Ember's tools. Timothy also tells you that Pretty Boy is after him for his winning hand, which gives him special access to areas in the casino. You're sent to the mayor of Trashlantis to get a Handsome Jack outfit made to get in the tower. I don't understand why every single thing has to be made into a joke in this game, and I use that term lightly. Like, is that a joke? Haha, trash, is that really a joke? Anyway, you make a constructor to prevent Pretty Boy from using the trash compactor to destroy the town, and he joins you. The first step of the heist is to get the blueprints to the casino, the next is to get the Compound 24 to breach the tower, and the final step is to get the materials to make Handsome Jack's outfit. When the heist is about to go off, you're betrayed by Freddy, and he kidnaps Timothy. You make your way to the VIP tower, kill Freddy, and fight Pretty Boy operating the Handsome Jack mech. When you win the fight, the ship is heading towards the event horizon of a black hole and needs the winning hand to stop. But Timothy is trapped and tells you to leave, but Moxie doesn't want to leave him behind after all the help he's given you. Timothy uses the laser cage to chop off his hand so you can stop the ship. The DLC ends with him asking Moxie why she went out to dinner with him, and she tells him that she was just hungry, and that he didn't fool her for a second when he said that he was Handsome Jack. To which he celebrates since she went out to dinner because it was him and not Handsome Jack that she was going out with. Moxie's Heist of the Handsome Jackpot was a good DLC. There was much more to dig into with the writing since Timothy Lawrence is a genuinely interesting character. He starts as a regular guy who becomes a body double of Handsome Jack for money. Over and over again, he's just an ordinary guy getting caught in extraordinary circumstances and has to adapt to that while figuring out who he is as a person. It doesn't help that he went from being a nobody to being a body double of the most famous man in the galaxy. Throughout his journey as a body double, he was either a pawn of Hyperion or a key to be used for Pretty Boy. During the heist, he's the key player in making it go off with his winning hand and looking like Handsome Jack for the scanner. When he chops off his hand using the cage to leave the casino, it symbolizes him ridding himself of the Handsome Jack identity and being free to be his own person. Validated by Moxie telling him that she went on a date with him, knowing that he wasn't Handsome Jack. The gameplay was just more Borderlands, but I really wish the DLC was more about the heist prep rather than just getting the characters for the heist and the game blowing through the preparation steps right before the final steps of the heist. It was a fun DLC though. Guns, Love, and Tentacles is the second DLC of Borderlands 3, and has you heading to Zylorgos for the wedding of Hammerlock and Wainwright Jacobs. When you arrive on the planet, you hear the wedding planner in trouble, who turns out to be Gage from Borderlands 2, and moves at a non-snail's pace when you follow her to the cabin while she's yapping. Actual gameplay improvements, dude! Wainwright invites you to look at the venue with him as he talks about his anxieties about the wedding. He wonders if Hammerlock would be happier with somebody more adventurous than he was. You hear chanting and come across people being sacrificed in a ritual, which looks like a wedding ceremony. You kill the husband, but his ring attaches to Wainwright's finger. After bringing him back to the lodge, you find a detective to get more information on what you're dealing with. and discover that the couple researched an artifact called Ginthian's Heart before they were possessed. You track down more information about it, bringing you to the local hunter tribe that wants you to kill a Wendigo to burn the ice to the way forward. Hammerlock comments that Wainwright would be much better at handling the possession situation than he would. Gage has Hammerlock assist you since he isn't improving the situation at the lodge, and hunting is a strong suit. Hammerlock comments to you that he's sure he loves Wainwright, but felt something pulling him out of the lodge, and is unsure of himself. Once you hunt down the Wendigo, Hammerlock tells you that the thought of Wainwright allowed him to overcome his fear of the creature. You see how the two complete each other in their relationship in this quest, and how someone adventurous isn't what Hammerlock wants. After opening the door, you arrive at Vincent and Eleanor's research station and upgrade Gage's death trap with a piece of the heart, with a fake out death in the process that made you feel more than any other actual death in this game did. You use Death Trap's upgrade to get into the keep and fight Eleanor in the heart. Once you complete the fight, Wainwright and Hammerlock get married using the rings that have now lost their power. Looking back, Guns, Love, and Tentacles was a DLC that was better than I thought it was when I played through it. It was a cute parody of Lovecraftian horror, and even though it felt out of place in the Borderlands universe, it did a solid job of developing the main cast. You learn more about the adventurous side of Hammerlock, the thoughtful, bordering on overthinking and anxious side of Wainwright, and Gage's ability to lead, strategize, know her allies' strengths, and adapt through a crisis, almost like there was a better choice to lead the Crimson Raiders and intergalactic spaceship than someone that isn't even old enough to have a driver's license. Nah, bro, this shit sucks. Psycho Krieg and the Fantastic Fustercluck is the last DLC of Borderlands 3 that's relevant to the story. It starts with Tannis teleporting you into the mind of Krieg to figure out the secret of what makes a psycho. You're teleported to a happy meadow where you fight off some enemies sent after you, before Sane Krieg saves you and tells you that what you're looking for is going to be behind a gate. He agrees to help you if you get him separated from the psycho side of himself. But you have to get the 3 parts of the statue to make it through the gate. The first area is the world from the perspective of Psycho Krieg, where you have to assault the meat castle. You find out that this was a mission against the Children of the Vault that they did with the Crimson Raiders, after not having fought with them in a while. But Sane Krieg doesn't know why this is important to his psycho side. You fight against an evil version of Mordecai and Brick Psycho Krieg imagined, who hate him from his perspective. You try to launch a catapult at the door to the meat castle, and launch the moon afterwards when that doesn't work. See, these are the sentences I like to say when I'm describing Borderlands. You learn Psycho Krieg finds it easier to assume everyone's an enemy and not to trust anyone. When you get in the keep, you hear evil Lilith belittling Krieg before you fight her at the top of the tower. Sane Krieg shows his psycho half how the end of the mission actually went down in a really heartwarming scene where the 3 of them invite Krieg to Moxie's for some drinks and genuinely appreciate having him around. You add the psycho buzz axe you got from the meat castle onto the statue and see Maya, the only thing the 2 Kriegs see the same on, get kidnapped by a train. As you chase after her, the train tries to keep you from reaching Maya. You eventually go through a portal and hear Maya's first conversation about inviting Krieg to the group. As the level goes on, it becomes more and more chaotic, with the train constantly going around the map, making you feel the chaos of Krieg's grief over Maya's death. You see how much the mind of Krieg desperately wants to hold on to the memories of Maya before you fight the train in a boss battle. A flashback of Maya telling Krieg that there was more to life than just survival, and that he should find something to fight for after understanding what he was trying to say in his psycho way plays. They leave the symbolism of the train up to interpretation, but it acts as a symbol of Krieg's journey through life and how the trajectory of who we become as people can be influenced by just a few moments in our lives. He wandered Pandora as someone fighting for survival before Maya gave him purpose. As people come and go through our lives quickly, so too do trains go from stop to stop, with stories at each step of the journey, people coming aboard and exiting at each station. One train earlier or later, and Krieg never would have met Maya, completely changing what his life would have been otherwise. Intertwined with his journey for a higher purpose was someone who he owed that journey to, Maya. You might be thinking, yo, are these the same writers? You attach the gauntlet and find out the last part of the statue is where both sides of Krieg met each other. You arrive at a Hyperion lab, but Krieg isn't able to see you or be present at the memory where he was experimented on. You shut down the experiment and see a dead subject, to which Krieg comments that he was one of the lucky ones. When you get to the room where Krieg was being experimented on, he tells you that the gas that the lead researcher Benedict tested on him turned others into monsters, but made him feel weak and powerless. The feeling is echoed with the map changing around you, making you feel confused and unable to control the situation around you. When it was observed that Krieg was developing multiple personalities, Dr. Benedict ordered that Krieg be killed, with his psycho side coming out, allowing him to kill Benedict and escape. While his psycho side made it hard for him to connect with the outside world, it was also what allowed him to act on his will to live within it. In the end, Krieg is unable to retrieve his memories of who he was before the experiments, but you get the mask to put on the statue, which symbolizes the psycho mask he puts on to protect himself. As you near Valhalla, the idea so powerful in the psycho's mind that it makes them the way they are, Krieg feels the origin of his rage before you fight the Psycho Reaver. After the final fight, you loot the Horde, and Krieg refuses Tannis' offer to separate him from his psycho half and wipe his memories after he realizes the rage you fought in the final battle was reaching out to consume his sane self. But the barriers his psycho half put up were to protect what was left of his humanity. Krieg realizes he was spending too long reaching for a past he lost that he forgot how to appreciate the life he had, and sees the opportunity in front of him to build from that point forward. If he hadn't had the moments of suffering that came along with the moments of peace and happiness, he just wouldn't have been, well, Krieg. The quality of the writing in this DLC was not just a step up from the writing in previous DLCs, but it was genuinely excellent. It does a deep dive into who Krieg is as a character and how he handles grief, struggle, and purpose. There was fantastic symbolism, character development, and creative environments. This DLC is a masterclass in what it means to blend story into gameplay. Not only is this the best written DLC in Borderlands 3, this is the best writing in the series so far. Psycho Krieg and the fantastic Fustercluck serves as a good metaphor for the Borderlands series. Ever since the release of Borderlands 2, the series has struggled to find its identity. In the first game, Borderlands was meant to push what RPGs could be, creating the looter-shooter genre in a dark, melancholic comedy thought experiment, criticizing the effect of corporate greed when it's now not just some other country thousands of miles away you don't care about, but some other planet thousands of light years away you don't care about, suffering the effects of corporate colonization without oversight. Borderlands 2 continued this with a charismatic figure rising to power with no government, opposition, or morals to keep him in check, with a more comedic twist on the series, better types of loot, new mechanics and skills, and diverse environments. After this point though, the series hasn't been able to find its footing. Pre-Sequel was a rushed mess that didn't expand the lore in any interesting ways, had clunky mechanics, and saw the comedic approach of Borderlands 2 as a go-ahead to force jokes into every situation, even when it wasn't necessary. However, at the end of the day, the story didn't hurt the gameplay too much. Borderlands 3, however, solidified how Gearbox lost sight of why Borderlands became so popular in the first place. While almost everything from a gameplay perspective was a massive step up, the lack of care towards the plot, not putting any thought into establishing lore or characters, and actively having the storytelling make the world and characters worse with the lazy writing at every turn, resulted in a game that felt like a gameplay sequel, but not a story sequel. All Borderlands was now was just a wacky random XD comedy game with crazy loot, evil corporations, and smug and shallow villains. It didn't help any that Marvel movies were at their peak at the time, and everyone, for some reason, thought it was complete cinema to have serious moments ruined by stupid jokes that are entirely out of place in the scene. In an IGN interview with Randy Pitchford in 2012, he was asked to describe Borderlands to somebody unfamiliar with the series and said this:
Borderlands is a game where a crazy psycho midget will run at you and you could punch his leg off.
Perfect. Pre-order now, Mom.
And take his stuff.
Yeah.
And take his stuff, and then use it to punch the next.
Gotcha.
Yeah, it's wild. It's like, oh, and the midget's on fire.
Okay.
Why did it work? For me, shooters are fun. It's fun. Just there's this we have this kind of reptilian brain. Some people call it the reptilian brain, which kind of handles our primal motivations, where we think oh, I need to eat that, or that's going to kill me, avoid that, okay. Or have sex with that, or whatever.
That's my favorite.
No,
one.
it's really the most primal kind of instincts, right? And we have this we've evolved into this kind of having these intellectual capacities, that have higher motivations. There's Maslow's hierarchy of motivations and stuff. The shooter always kind of spoke to that primal kind of thing. It just feels good to kind of like move and aim and to jump and just shoot, and you get this feedback and like, it's just, and you can't even explain it, but like just in the moment to moment play, it's just fun. There's just something that's rewarding and feeling good about a shooter that's done really well. But the thing about shooters is they're just kind of like, you just throw different stuff at us, and the character at the end of pretty much every shooter you've ever played is identical to the character at the beginning in terms of what he can do, how high he can jump, for example, or what you find some new guns along the way, but it's not like they get better. It's like maybe you get like a new little gadget that does something, but for the most part the characters stay the same. And then meanwhile there's this whole other genre, the role-playing game genre, where there's nothing moment to moment about it. Like back in the early days of Hack, it was like turn-based, and all like text characters were representing the things. Like the predecessor to Diablo was called Hack, right? And the fun had nothing to do with that visceral kind of, the reptilian brain motives. The fun of these games is about making decisions, having choices about
changing
like,
your character.
This character or that character, and then once you made a choice, how do I configure that character, and then what gear do I pick? Oh, here's a tool that this one does more damage, but that one's more accurate and is faster. That's an interesting choice.
What do I do?
Right? And then making that choice and then feeling the effects of that choice, and it's like really gratifying, and then over time growing and becoming more and more powerful, more and more capable, so that at the end you're just you're like godlike in power compared to where you were at the beginning. And that's a whole different set of motivations and engagement that's kind of long range. And what occurred to us was that the fun that happens from those games is actually not mutually exclusive to the fun that happens in this kind of visceral moment-to-moment shooter. And we realized, holy crap, that is chocolate, and that's freaking peanut butter. And if we just put these things together, we can have, this could be amazing, So we did, and holy crap, peanut butter cups taste pretty good.
It was clear he understood Borderlands. How can we do wild, badass shit and push the limits of what makes an RPG shooter while still having everything make sense? It was controlled chaos, not a trash can approach where everything goes. It felt like everything in Borderlands 2 was included for a reason, as opposed to Borderlands 3, where there was so much unnecessary fluff that you could remove entire sections and not lose anything from the story. Honestly, it might even be improved by doing that. Borderlands became a product and not a project, and that is the main problem the series suffers to this day. I appreciate that the devs are realizing that maybe they went too far with injecting humor into every moment of the game, and they seem to be creating an actual grounded story with hopefully the antagonist who isn't smug villain number 28 taunting you the entire story in the next game. Hopefully they don't go too far in the other direction with Borderlands 4. We're already getting some hints of it with the toned down art style and character designs. But you'd never know until the game actually comes out and you shell out your $80 plus season pass plus pre-order plus special edition to actually become a real fan. In the meantime though, it looks like we can watch... Oh no. So, I can start off the video by setting up some question, asking if the Borderlands movie was really so bad, or try to delude you into thinking that there was some redeemable value this movie had to offer the world. I can't really do that in good faith. When the trailer dropped on YouTube, we all knew what it was. Like a weather report before the inevitable natural disaster which was about to hit. It would never be in question if there would be damage. It was always a question of how bad was the damage going to be. In the aftermath of Borderlands 3, the game had a positive reception, but never truly scratched that Borderlands itch like 2 was able to, with multiple playthroughs, high level caps, insane loot grinds, and an actually good story. But you already know about that part. In 2022, Tiny Tina's Wonderlands was released, which was generally a well-received spin-off, expanding the Assault on Dragon's Keep concept from Borderlands 2 into its own game. And New Tales from the Borderlands was released, which still just didn't get it. I don't want to beat a dead horse with this game because I don't think I'd have enough new to say about it to warrant its own video, and it was more a product of the direction of the series rather than being something to drive the direction of the series itself. Also, I don't have it in me to make that video, man. However, with the trailer of the Borderlands movie, that all changes. When changing mediums for a series, you always have to think about 1, how you're going to adapt the feel and essence of the series into that medium, and 2, how you're going to market the series with the new medium change. The first part is much harder and complicated without a clear answer, but the second part has a couple of clearer strategies. You can either create something directed towards people already familiar with the series, but that'll result in fewer sales and a lower budget. However, there'll be less risk in the end. Or you can expand your audience and create something to appeal to the broader public, but this comes with much higher risk. You can lose a lot of money, since projects that appeal to the broader public are generally higher budget, especially with hiring celebrity actors, as well as the less measurable risk of damaging your brand. You can have the broader public think less of the series from having a bad showing, and you can damage your brand in the eyes of fans for having cynically sold out the brand without respect for what the series meant. You can probably see where I'm going with this video. You can also do a mix between the two. Just kidding. Nobody does mid-budget movies anymore for some reason. Now, even though I phrase these two options in a way that seems biased, they're both valid strategies. Shows like Arcane and The Last of Us can clearly skyrocket the popularity of a game, with clear respect being shown towards fans of the series. And low-budget movies can be turbo ass and disrespect the shit out of the fans, like every video game movie made before the late 2010s ever. With talks of a Borderlands movie being made starting in 2011, and Randy Pitchford feeling more convinced of the idea after the success of Tales from the Borderlands, actual talks with Lionsgate regarding a film adaptation started in 2015, with the series clearly seeming to take the strategy of a high-budget film, which would appeal to a wide audience. After the script being passed around more times than your mom last night, it eventually ended up in the hands of Eli Roth, who was given inspiration for the movie by watching his dog pooping. No, I'm not joking. Let me read from this article for you. Roth has a pet of his own, a French bulldog, who gave him the inspiration he needed when pitching a Borderlands movie to Lionsgate. Whenever I take her for a walk and she has to go to the bathroom, she won't let me look at her, Roth explains in the latest issue of SFX magazine. I have to look away because she gets really shy. But one day, I filmed her. She had that shy look on her face, and I was like, that's Claptrap. Claptrap, voiced by Jack Black in the movie, is a clunky one-wheeled robot with a bubbly personality and yellow paint that makes him look like a convenient target for bored bandits on the rough and tumble planet of Pandora. After learning that Claptrap can be shot hundreds of times without dying, Roth considered the logistics of this and sold his movie to the studio execs with a scene where Claptrap has to expel the spent bullets from his rear with the shameful demeanor of a pooping Frenchie. That was my pitch to Lionsgate. They were laughing so hard, and everyone in the room stood up to clap and throw roses, he wrote, as he hit post on his Reddit account in between episodes of Psychosis. Filming began in April 2021, with reshoots taking place in January of 2023, and new writers and composers going in and out of the project like, oh, okay, I'm done making jokes about your mom. Honestly, with how many people's hands this passed through, filming seems like it was complete chaos. Along with the movie being inspired by literal dog shit, things were not looking good for the film adaptation. The trailer begins like any good trailer would. That's right, with the production assistant clearly in view to help open the manhole cover, which actually made it to the final cut of the movie. I'm not going to do a frame by frame, but immediately after you see Roland, played by Kevin Hart, kicking Claptrap down the manhole, which is pretty out of character. While Roland would most likely be annoyed by Claptrap, he'd never just kick an ally down into an unknown area without at least trying to convince them to come down with him first. One thing that will stick out immediately is the casting decisions of the movie. You might be forgiven for mistaking this trailer for a congressional hearing. Why is everyone so old? Even though it's Kevin Hart, it can at least make sense for Roland being an experienced soldier and his canon age during the first Borderlands game being 34. At least he had the dedication to the role enough that he trained with actual Navy SEALs to prepare to play Roland, which, respect to Kevin Hart for that, honestly. And I was genuinely surprised that I did not actually hate him in this movie. Still would have preferred a different actor though. Besides Jack Black being cast as Claptrap, because I guess he's just in every video game movie now, I genuinely do not understand most of the casting decisions here. I'm still baffled to this day at the casting decision for Cate Blanchett to play Lilith. The central character flaw Lilith struggled with in the series was her hot-headedness from her youth and inexperience, and tendency to make brash decisions, making her a great symbol for resistance, but a lackluster leader. Throughout the series, she's constantly over-reliant on her siren powers and jumping into danger without thinking it through. When you cast somebody who is literally twice her age during the events of Borderlands 1, it leads to some really weird moments, as we'll see later. Jamie Lee Curtis as Tannis is just, once again, what? That's right, let's cast someone who's old enough to collect social security checks to play the person sent to an alien planet at the beginning of her career as a researcher. Did these writers even play the game? Why else would they remove Brick and Mordecai to replace them with Tiny Tina and Krieg? Badass sniper assassin with a killer bird, turbo-jacked bruiser who goes berserk and beats bandits to death with his bare fists. Nobody wants to see that lame shit. We need to keep the movie about a game with gratuitous blood and gore PG-13. You like random XD teenager who loves explosions. You like the guy who screams poop. You like Jack Black. Why don't you consume more, you fucking idiot? It's just the most cynical trailer I've ever seen. When you watch through it, it feels like what would be too on the nose for a parody of a focus-tested corporate low-effort mass-market slop trailer. Why do we keep getting people who have never played the games or don't understand the series in charge of these movies? Wow, Pandora sure looks uninteresting. Gee, these characters' adaptations sure unearth a primordial rage within my soul. If only there were some source material they could look into for some interesting and unique elements for the movie to show off what Borderlands is about. But instead, we got a trailer that represents everything the series is meant to criticize. But at least you got your movie, Randy, after it lost $80 million. Okay, I want you to visualize this. The median American in their lifetime will make around $1.7 million. This movie took around $110 to $120 million to make, so we'll take 115 as the number for the budget. That means it took 67 lifetimes worth of income to make this movie. Keep that in mind as we go through this film. So, without further ado, the movie opens with Lilith narrating the exposition. She talks about Pandora being a peaceful planet thrown into chaos after everyone decided to search for the vault there, even though the series constantly makes it a point that Pandora is a planet that hosts incredibly dangerous wildlife, even if there was no human involvement present. As opposed to the much less interesting actual story of Borderlands, I guess, where Pandora was a planet inhabited by prison labor used by Dahl for mining, but were driven out by Atlas after they reverse-engineered Iridian technology from the vault they found on Promethea, with the citizens they left behind having to fend for themselves from the most sophisticated corporate military, extremely lethal wildlife, and dangerous freed psychopathic criminal slaves, while the entire galaxy, including the Vault Hunters, have a bigger interest in finding riches and treasures than in the planet-wide humanitarian crisis. But don't let an interesting background of the story that was right there for you to use to get in the way of losing an amount of money at the box office only 0.0004% of the planet will ever see in their lifetimes. God, Kevin Hart is so hilarious, isn't he? Why don't you consume more, you fucking idiot? The movie cuts to the space station having a breach, and the funniest man in the world, Kevin Hart, commenting on how the helmet of what's supposed to be the most powerful corporate army has no air holes. Not one level of thought there, huh? But man, didn't you laugh? Don't you see Kevin Hart is right there, you stupid moron? He rescues Tiny Tina from her cell, and you might be mistaken that the fight choreography is actually good in the movie, when it's actually that Kevin Hart is the only one who cared. As you immediately meet Krieg, who uses his force powers to push the Atlas soldiers away and knock out General Knox, as he brings his arm down rather than making a pushing movement. The next scene shows Lilith on Promethea, bringing the criminal she apprehended to the bar for some reason. Is this where she's turning in her contract? Because it sure seems like the bartender who I would want to suplex me has no idea what's going on with the dude. Is it to show how used to violence and underground activity the population is? Because that's immediately undermined when everyone flees the second they hear gunshots after Lilith kills the party of guys who approached her about a job. Obviously, it makes sense for people to run, but it would add a lot of character and world building, and even be kind of funny to have a couple people at least staying behind, either finishing drinks or sticking around to observe the situation while hiding under tables. Deucalion Atlas uses a face projector to offer a job to Lilith to rescue his daughter on Pandora, which she agrees to after seeing the payment. I don't know why he didn't just lead with that if she agreed that fast, but I guess we're just used to 40 IQ villains at this point in the series. She gets a beacon to activate for calling Atlas, and she arrives on Pandora. Lilith goes around asking people if they've seen Tina, pointing her in the right direction, and she gets on the bus driven by Marcus. You know, that bus, which told you more about Pandora in one scene than the entire movie has told you about the planet up to this point. She gets dropped off, and the environment on Pandora is just junkyards. Throughout the entire movie, this is every environment. I just don't get it. I feel like you're spending more budget to make the world less interesting. You could have a couple of shacks and farms or something to show you how people live when she goes past a village or something, but everything is just a trash heap. Sure, there was a good deal of that in the original Borderlands, but all the junk served a purpose. Every bit of material or tech left by Dahl was repurposed for other uses. Scrap was turned into towns, barracks were used as hideouts, and mines were transformed into strongholds. Every abandoned material told a story about how each group of people survived on the planet. Here, it doesn't add anything other than more opportunities to chew through your budget. Anyway, Lilith is approached by Claptrap as the lead went cold, and it just so happens he can access the Echo Net to search all cameras for Tina, since Lilith can't do actual bounty hunter things like, oh I don't know, researching information on Roland and who he would know on Pandora to get an idea of where they would be going and who they would be meeting up with. They find out Tina is in the Tundra Express. No, not the one with the snow and the Varkids. The one that's a desert junkyard, just like the rest of the planet. Lilith lines up the bandit in her scope to steal his vehicle, and he kindly jumps down to the ground with no impact effects as to maintain the PG-13 rating of the movie. She meets Tina, who tries to blow her up after she drops Atlas's pager and thinks nothing of the dynamite under the bed, before being attacked by Krieg and his omnipresent voiceover, which manifests itself into the universe without him needing to move his mouth. $115 million. General Knox shows up. Also, can we talk about the Crimson Lance outfits? Let me just do a side-by-side here so you can see the issue. Listen, either we make these look cool, or we make these functional. Not do neither. This non-camouflaged military outfit has no pockets, multiple points for objects to get snagged on, a helmet which has no ventilation, armor that doesn't even cover the entire torso, and random ass knee and elbow pads to hamper mobility. At least the outfit in Borderlands 1 covered up to the shins, covered the full torso, and had pouches on the belt. And any other design inefficiencies, you can just say, wow, dude, that's power armor. It just does, it works, it does stuff. It might sound like I'm nitpicking here, but these things do add up to make the world and characters feel more alive. Atlas just sending in people without any body armor before actually offering the payment, as well as not telling Lilith that Tina might not want to go with her, makes him seem like a moron. Lilith, not even thinking about researching Roland while going after Tina, makes her seem like a bad bounty hunter, and garbage and scrap being everywhere with no sign of people actually living here makes the world not feel lived in or thought out. These things matter. Kevin Hart then picks up the crew, initiating a chase sequence which ends in Pisswash Gully, which I guess they repurposed as an area full of Thresher piss. I don't necessarily have a problem with this, just do Threshers do this everywhere they go, or is this a specific spot where they go to pee? I'm just left with more questions at this point. But they jump the goalie through the gullet and escape Atlas. One of the tires blows on the truck, and Kevin Hart and Lilith agree to work together, since now Atlas will want to kill her for what she did. Lilith learns the group is after the vault to use it for good, and they go to Sanctuary to find a researcher who can help them. When they arrive, they all wear hologram masks, which nobody else is wearing. That 100% would not draw attention to them in a city occupied by Atlas while they're actively on the hunt for criminals at large in the area in one of the largest population centers. I will say though that it is completely in character for Marcus to have booth babes working for him to sell weapons, and is something I can totally see him doing. Picking Benjamin Byron Davis to play Marcus is probably the best casting decision of this movie. Good job, man. The group then makes their way to Moxie's when Roland is noticed by Bobby Lee, and the elite soldier proceeds to not only look back, but take the mask off to the Atlas soldier while Lilith talks to Moxie about where to find the scientist to learn more about the vault key. I get that he's trying to take out the person who recognizes him, but there were so many better ways to handle this, like going somewhere secluded, or just keep walking in the first place. Bobby Lee manages to go through the scene without sexually harassing anyone and gets tased while Atlas soldiers spot the incident through the open blinds that Moxie closed at the beginning of the scene. Moxie makes a distraction, the group escapes, and joins the scientist at the Dark Council of Elders. Keep in mind, in the Borderlands lore, the oldest person in this room should be 34. Lilith recognizes Tannis and throws a temper tantrum and walks out the room while Claptrap fries himself in the electric shower. This is one of those moments I was talking about where it just feels really weird to have a middle-aged woman storming off and sulking the whole scene. Even the script seems to not want the casting. Tannis tries to talk to Lilith, and we find out Tannis was given the responsibility to take care of her by her mother, but left her to be raised by bounty hunters instead while she went after the vault, which her mother was chasing after. Okay, it's super glaring that these actors are only like 10 years apart. So if Lilith was like 10, Tannis would only be like 20 at the time of being tasked with the responsibility of taking care of her. I don't know, dude. The timeline is just weird. But if they were creative writers, they could have had an interesting backstory with Tannis not being able to handle the responsibility of raising a child at that age and subjecting Lilith to a life of misery because she wasn't ready to take care of another human being. But haven't you seen Kevin Hart, man? That dude is so fucking hilarious. The next scene is one of the few actual alright scenes of the movie. Tina walks out to Lilith on the balcony, and you learn more about Tina being a clone infused with Iridian blood to be used as a tool to open the vault, with Lilith reassuring her at the end of the scene that Atlas won't find her. It contrasts nicely with the last scene, with Lilith seeing a bit of herself in Tina and choosing to protect her rather than running away like Tannis did, highlighting the more heroic aspects of her character. The next morning, Claptrap rolls around town to find spare parts as an extremely recognizable robot, instead of doing literally anything else like asking the scientist who is right there, but instead decides to pick the dialogue option that's clearly there as the wrong option that developers put in games for the memes, while Moxie is interrogated by Nox and Bobby Lee after the directors decide to trust him around that many women. And oh, would you look at that, the curtain thing again. Tannis shows the crew a journal that talks about the vault key, which is located in Caustic Caverns. Claptrap then tells the group he got spotted, and they all get smuggled out through the trash by Moxie. We then get the famous scene of the manhole being opened by Krieg, Tannis, Claptrap, Roland, Lilith, Tina, and extra number 15. Tannis tells everyone about Caustic Caverns being left over from chemicals in the city's mining operations, and everyone makes their way across the unstable catwalk by distributing the group's weight all in the same section, while not holding onto the pipes that are right there. You know how in Borderlands 2, Caustic Caverns was an expansive cave network with crystalline structures and creatures which were mined by Dahl as they extracted all possible natural resources without any care or concern for the environment? Well, there it was, that one hallway. I don't know if they expected Borderlands fans to soy point as soon as they heard Caustic Caverns or something. It just seems like a weird scene to add with nobody's expertise on display. It's just like, yep, there's acid, next scene. The group then finds markings of the bloodshots and comments that these are the psychos that the psychos are afraid of. Roland then says there are too many bandits to shoot, and everyone has a collective idea to send Claptrap in to make a distraction, who then gets shot up. They then make it to a storage room that for some reason hasn't been ransacked by bandits, and Lilith manages to find the key after she's drawn to it. We then get the famous scene which had the executives at Lionsgate shitting and pissing and coming as they thought you would be stupid enough to enjoy the first psychological war crime ever caught on film. This then attracts the bandits, who I guess just conveniently forgot their guns. They fight through the caves and find an elevator, which Tanis fixes for the crew, while Roland and Krieg go out to distract the bandits. The Bloodshots then gather at the gate, but it's all good because Roland and Krieg use their teleporting powers to get in the elevator with everyone else. However, a wiring problem occurs, and Roland stays behind to fix it before getting overwhelmed by bandits. The elevator goes way too fast, but Tina manages to use her siren powers to teleport everyone out. This section is the most egregious example of the writer's infatuation with tell, don't show. They tell you these are the psychos are afraid of. They tell you that they're not going to shoot their way out of this one, and then they proceed to shoot their way out of this one, and the super duper dangerous Bloodshots just completely forget about having firearms, except for the one guy with the flamethrower that thought he looked really cool before dying instantly. This is the perfect opportunity for the bandits to act like total bastards. They literally have a hideout with an underground facility filled with acid, tunnels, twists and turns, and the most they ever make use of it is a group of guys that instantly give themselves away with their light up masks in the dark. The only cool use of the environment was when Roland shot up the pipes to block off an entire path with acid, just because it's a comedy, and I use that term lightly. Actually, you know what? With the Austin comedy scene nowadays, maybe Offensive and Dogshit is using the term properly now. It doesn't make it an excuse to completely forget about shot continuity or using the environment to set up interesting fight scenes and showing that the bandits you're saying are dangerous are actually dangerous and take advantage of the confusing and hazardous terrain to fight their enemies. You know, the entire reason the US lost the Vietnam War. You know what? It's comedy, so we can throw out all conventions of good writing, directing, and being funny. God, that pooping scene was hilarious. Didn't you realize it's modern year? You just don't understand the importance of comedy. We're truth tellers. We tell the truth. We make fun of minorities. We interview war criminals without any journalistic integrity. Just call it comedy, and nobody can ever criticize your work again. The party then takes shelter in a mine as Tanis pulls out the vault key that apparently they forgot to use the budget on. It shows them the location of the vault, and you learn the siren is the third piece of the vault key and might kill Tina when it opens the vault. You then see Roland push bodies off of him. As it turns out, yes, you can shoot your way out of this one. The next scene has the group making camp for the night as Claptrap gives the broken Atlas receiver to Lilith, who then goes on to smash it. A drone with Atlas's hologram immediately shows up since the device had a tracker in it. Tiny Tina then overhears the conversation, which sounds kind of weird with no context, and tosses a grenade at Lilith since she thinks she's been working with Atlas this whole time. The next scene has Lilith walking through the village where she grew up as a kid, with a flashback to the village getting raided by bandits and her getting rescued by Jamie Lee Curtis, who is looking like a pretty rough 20-something years old right now. Lilith finds the house she grew up in as a kid, and Claptrap projects a hologram of her mom telling Lilith she's her very special PogChamp, and she sent Claptrap to show Lilith her destiny, prompting Lilith to chase after Tina. Tanis and company find the vault, but it turns out Tina isn't able to open it. Atlas shows up with his army, but Roland shows up, surviving only due to the power of friendship, which inspires Nox to join them and get killed instantly. But hold on, wait, it's Lilith, Claptrap, and no fucking way. You find out Lilith is actually the daughter of Iridia and agrees to open the vault in exchange for letting everyone go free. Lilith then has her siren powers awaken and attacks Atlas as she makes her friends invincible during the final fight scene of the movie. However, she then gets blasted and tries to destroy the blaster on the ship, but is unsuccessful as her friends lose their invincibility. She then wakes up to shield another blast from the ship. Krieg kills Crom. Yes, the guy who looks like Sledge is actually Crom, and destroys the ship. Atlas then takes Tina hostage, and Lilith opens the vault for him. She steals a shield, and he gets eaten by the vault monster. The movie then ends with Sanctuary celebrating and Lilith flying into the sky to make the Firehawk symbol. The Borderlands movie was bad. You knew it was bad. I knew it was bad. We all knew it was going to be bad as soon as the trailer dropped. But oh my god, did it have to be this way? Was Borderlands 1's story not good enough somehow? Did we have to get all of these celebrity actors in the movie instead of going with a quote-unquote lower budget series, which has seemed to be working for other games so far? How is it that this movie ran in the same budget range as the entirety of the first seasons of The Last of Us, Fallout, or Arcane? The level of blatant incompetence is genuinely unacceptable. The story is awful, the characters are horribly miscast, and there's no diving into the actually interesting parts of Borderlands, such as the competing corporations and their interests in Pandora, the mystery of the Iridians and the purpose of the vaults, and the incredibly dangerous wildlife of the planet. All it takes is one viewing of the trailer or even the script to know that this movie was not it. There's nothing redeemable about this movie. I tried to find interesting or cool things as I saw them, so I don't sound like a hack who's just shitting on this movie to shit on it, but I can't do it. It doesn't make me feel good that Eli Roth's probably never going to be trusted with a project like this ever again. I get no joy from the series I loved as a teenager losing its personality to become haha funny game with robot, psycho, and explosion kid. In fact, I'm kind of pissed off actually, that now every executive is going to look at Borderlands and not ever touch a film or series adaptation with a 10-foot pole because of this atrocity. I hope this movie acted as a wake-up call for the series that maybe it's time to stop listening to the executives about what made Borderlands great and start listening to the people who the series resonated with. Well, I guess it's about that time when we find out. One of the hallmarks of the human experience is the fear of the finite, the realization that what's present will soon become past, what's here will soon be gone, and well, you get the drift. The feeling of when the streetlights are about to come on as a kid, and the realization that you won't be here forever, and what will last is what you leave behind when you're gone. I've never had this feeling more while playing through a video game than while playing through Borderlands 4. This isn't to say I didn't enjoy it or think it's a bad game. That's 100% not the case. I had a great time with it. No, it's that it confirms something that's been lurking in the back of my mind for a while, and that's that the Borderlands series is dead. Or at least the idea of what the Borderlands series was to me was dead. Now, originally when I made my video essays on the Borderlands series, I planned on ending it off with the Borderlands movie, but it didn't really feel right with Borderlands 4 around the corner when I started working on the video, and I figured I'd give Gearbox one more chance to course correct since I'm definitely not the first, and certainly won't be the last to raise my opinion that the direction of the series has taken since its conception, which Gearbox should be more than familiar with at this point. This video won't be a full analysis of the game and story, because it would take away from the main point that I'm making. I want this video to be more of a conclusion of my thoughts on what were the important aspects I viewed as essential to the Borderlands series, compared to what the series became, compared to how they're addressed in the most recent installation of the series. So, get your existential dread hat on, and let's talk about Borderlands 4. In covering this game, I'll be starting with the gameplay and the elements which I thought were pretty good and done well, moving to the and debatable depending on what you look for in games, ending with the bad and straight up unacceptable when it comes to gameplay, and edging you until the end with my thoughts on the story. The gameplay and new mechanics are easily the best part of the new Borderlands, and are usually the aspects of the game that the developers consistently manage to get right. I can gladly say that Borderlands 4 is not an exception to this. The movement with the sliding from Borderlands 3 with the addition of the double jumping, gliding, dodging, and grappling feels smooth and responsive, and gives you the most control over weaving in, out, and through combat than any other Borderlands title. The new gear slots include ordinances, rep kits, and enhancements in addition to the classic class mods, shields, and weapons. Ordinances have replaced grenade mods to include rocket launchers and Gatling guns in addition to grenades, as well as being on a cooldown rather than having a set amount of ammo. I personally found this to be a good change, since I never used rocket launchers in any previous Borderlands game and would just spam grenades in one fight rather than spacing them out and having them be a consistent mechanic of combat like is incentivized with ordinances. Rep kits act as a small heal mid-combat with some short-term buffs associated with them, such as decreased damage from attacks, lifesteal, or elemental immunity, among other things. Enhancements reward using specific manufacturers or guns with parts from other manufacturers, which is a new mechanic in the game, where you can have a Tediore gun that can switch elements with a Malawan underbarrel, a Jacob's gun with Atlas tracking darts, or a Vladov gun with a Hyperion shield. While using the manufacturer in question, you get a set of buffs unique to those weapons. While this is really good from a gameplay perspective, where generally with certain builds and playstyles you'll gravitate towards certain manufacturers, it's a little jarring from a narrative perspective where these gameplay elements are never really addressed thematically. I wish it was incorporated a bit more into the story where it called you out more for fighting against blind corporate loyalty and authoritarian power structures indifferent to human life while utilizing those same means to your ends. There are genuinely some really interesting concepts that you can put into your story through gameplay. At what point are you using the system to change it versus just furthering that same system with a revolutionary branding flair? I wish narratively these mechanics were handled with a bit more self-awareness and the series tackled some of the higher concepts, but I feel like it's pretty agreed upon at this point that you can't really count on Borderlands anymore to deliver on those themes. Especially with the shameless money-grubbing tactics of Gearbox and 2K behind the scenes undermining the message even if they did. The customization in this game is really good. You're constantly rewarded with new heads, outfits, and weapon skins for completing challenges and side quests, although they're a bit fewer and further between than I would have liked. The customization options look cool, but I don't think I'd go as far as saying any of them could be the standard look for the character, like the developers did. We'll get into it later, but there were some other elements that also undermine the customization system that they put into the game. Borderlands 4 by far has the most extensive build options in the entire series. Now your skill trees have skill trees, and honestly, I think it almost borders on too much. Listen, call me Unk and take me out back behind the shed, but it seems like games nowadays always run under the assumption that more equals better. With how giant these skill trees are, it seems like the game assumes you'll be putting hundreds of hours into it, rather than the one, maybe two playthroughs that the average player will. In the endgame of older Borderlands titles, you would be through one whole skill tree and half of the way through another by the time you were at the final boss, generally giving you the gist of each character, requiring one or two playthroughs with each character to explore their kit and capabilities. In Borderlands 4, the same is true, but instead of for each character, it's for one of each character's skill trees. While augments to action skills were a great addition to the series, with the variety of builds existing among every character, it starts to undermine the identity of each class, where what each character excels in isn't as clear as it was in previous entries. I had more moments in this game than any other Borderlands game where I said to myself, man, this would be a really cool gun to use if I weren't running this particular build. With the exception of the min-max late game builds, previous games incentivized a just go with it kind of mentality, where gaining a certain legendary or some other piece of unique gear would guide you towards other playstyles since your skills weren't as significant of a factor in your build, making the loot feel really good even if it wasn't optimal for your build. When the skills matter more, the loot matters less. Sometimes the lack of customization can make a character or run of the game feel more unique due to the trajectory of your gameplay being based on your loot and factors specific to your run rather than specific to your build. Now obviously, if developers leaving a bit of slack in the proverbial gameplay experience leash isn't necessarily something you care about like I do, then this might not be such a big deal for you. But reviews are subjective, and if you find the same things that make me tick in video games are the same things for you, then the customization sides a bit on the too much end of things, especially for the size of the game. Speaking on the size of the game, this part of the review gets to the not great, bad, and blatantly unacceptable parts of the game. A trend I see in a lot of AAA games is the concept of superficial content, which is also present in Borderlands 4, mainly the side quests and open world. The obsession with open world is probably one of the bigger blights on the gaming industry at the moment, with that being used as a replacement for actually making a compact gameplay experience, and it ends up bloating the budget of every project it touches without anything significant being added. The point of open world games is to create an immersive experience. The reason why open world works so well with RPGs is because of how how combat, and especially non-combat skills, interact with the world. Whether it be ingredients and monster organs used for their magical and alchemical properties, stealth and lockpicking to interact with criminal underworlds, and crafting and speech used to interact with the artisans and higher-ups of society, an open world makes sense because there's lore and world building used to make you feel like you're part of the universe and living within it. Finding your place through the background you made for your character and the skills you possess. Side quests in these cases become essential to build out certain factions of the world and tell you more about the universe based on the way you interact with it. Then there's Borderlands 4, where you can help a self-conscious rocket AI launch and achieve their dream of being a full-fledged exploding missile. Yeah, did anyone ever think that it could be possible that Borderlands 2 succeeded despite the obnoxious humor and meme reference side quests instead of because of it? For every one that worked, there were like 9 others I chose to wipe from my memory rather than admit they ever existed in a game I enjoy. Anyway, an open world was just not necessary for this game, and didn't add anything interesting to the gameplay that couldn't be achieved through designing areas like in previous games. In fact, it'd probably be better since having self-contained areas makes each feel unique and lets the developers build out the lore of each section of the game, giving you a peek of what's important to the world for each area, rather than having it spread out through an entire open world. There's a reason you remember Firestone and not, what was the place that you met Russian again? The endgame in Borderlands 4 right now is not great. After I was done with the story, I thought I was missing something when I did the Ultimate Vault Hunter side quest, but nope. The endgame content after you beat it consists of Zane's firmware, which allows you to add certain modifiers onto your gear, adding another level of complexity to the loot grind, which is a pretty fun addition. Specialization points, which give you small buffs to round out your build, Maurice's Bounty, which allows you to buy legendary items, Moxie's Big Encore, which allows you to fight bosses again for loot, and, unfortunately, wildcard missions. Instead of having you do another run of the game, wildcard missions have you replay certain sections, long dialogue pauses included, with probably some of the most annoying buffs possible on enemies. I had the wonderful luck of having every enemy spawn an exploding black hole on death, but I've also seen evidence of such exciting gameplay features as all enemies being invisible or only being able to be damaged by headshots. But I guess we can all just say skill issue rather than admit that it's possible for some mechanics to be added to games that just aren't fun. Beyond this, there just isn't really a significant endgame that kept me wanting to play. If I wasn't able to write it off on my taxes, I don't know if I'd really be able to justify the $70 price tag. It genuinely baffles me how each Borderlands game after 2 and the pre-sequel manages to create a worse UI than each previous entry to the point where it seems like it's almost a competition now. In Borderlands 4, the UI just feels so bad to use. It seems to be designed for PC use with none of the upsides. The menu is needlessly a mess, with your loot not really standing out from anything else, requiring the game to have to add in filters for your inventory. This is exceptionally noticeable when you go to the customization tab and it's not organized by which skins you've unlocked first and what you've unlocked not being distinct from everything else, causing you to have to spend longer than you'd like selecting a skin for your gun. The alert spam also goes into every part of your inventory, which I don't think anyone actually asked for besides a clear all alert symbols button, which they obviously did not include. Small quality of life aspects are also missing, such as being able to drag a weapon to another slot, or to click on one gun, then click on another to swap the slots they're in. You also aren't able to hold left click on a fast travel location either, but have to press the specific button the game tells you to. I guess I don't know what the problem was with the Borderlands 2 inventory system. It seemed to work pretty well to organize loot, was visually distinct at first glance, and also showed off your character so you can appreciate your equipped skins, and it felt like you weren't taken out of the game in its entirety. This UI feels amateur and adds an extremely unnecessary amount of inventory management that they have already figured out how to bypass in previous entries of the series. I don't know when this happened, but at some point it became acceptable for multi-million-dollar AAA projects to perform like they were being run on a TI-84 at launch. to which Gearbox had to put out a day one patch instead of actually, optimizing their game properly before launch. I saw articles of people struggling to get 60 FPS while running a 5090 in their rig, which is completely unacceptable, especially while compiling shaders will be the two words you will see together the most throughout your entire playthrough. I already went on my rant about Randy Pitchford, so you can pause the video to read his tweet, but I'm kind of just over at this point, when literally all he had to say was, "Yep, we're aware of it and working on it, actual man-child." At least Bobby Kotick, as evil as he is, gets a modicum of respect from me for knowing when to shut the fuck up and stick to the shadows because he knows everyone hates him, and that isn't changing anytime soon. As opposed to Randy Pitchford, who still seems like he's desperately trying to be liked. This part contains some spoilers, so watch at your own risk, but I'll put a warning ahead of when I'm about to talk about certain significant events in the game I have a problem with. Borderlands 4 follows the 4 Vault Hunters Vex, Eamon, Harlow, and Rafa, fighting against the Timekeeper, an authoritarian who rules Kairos with an iron fist. The game does a great job of establishing the character. He kills all of the prisoners you attempt to save to break down your hope of escape, only to at the end possess your character to try to kill the person responsible for rescuing you, with the character in question saving you by relinquishing his own ability to resist possession, to which the Timekeeper then has him stab himself in the chest. This intro sequence is genuinely excellent for establishing the Timekeeper as a villain who rewards loyalty and harshly and disproportionately punishes those who oppose him. He constantly makes it a point that it is useless and futile to ever resist him. After this point though, it doesn't really feel like the Timekeeper is too present in the story, with the game having you fight off the 3 generals before fighting the final area, which was a bit disappointing because I really think they could have done so much more with this villain. This game still does a much better job at pretty much every aspect of the story than Borderlands 3. However, that's not really saying anything because I could also say the same thing about half of Adam Sandler's filmography. But Borderlands 4 does manage to tone down the bad aspects of the series' writing. While there are a few obnoxious characters, the writers at least make an attempt at making them likable, which they do all right at. I really like the interactions between Zane and Amara, with the two of them genuinely seeming like they were close allies and fought side by side together. With the exception of the side quests, there really wasn't too much of the writing that I rolled my eyes at, but there wasn't really anything beyond the introduction of the game that managed to catch my attention either. So this part is spoiler territory, so I'll add the timestamps to where it ends, so don't say I didn't warn you. 3, 2, 1. There were a couple things that annoyed me about the story. The first was Zadra's death, which seemed incredibly forced. Throughout the entire game, they make it a point that she is incredibly intelligent and created the technology that the Timekeeper uses to hold power. But as soon as your Echo 4 is fried, she doesn't realize you've been possessed by the Timekeeper, which is the #1 character who should have noticed. It'd be one thing if she pretended to not know you were possessed and tried to outsmart the Timekeeper and failed, but she just doesn't realize how her own technology works. The finale to the game was also pretty anticlimactic and ended very abruptly without too much of a build-up. In the phase, they just kind of forgot about expanding on that too. All in all, the story was okay, but it won't really get you interested in the universe like 1 or 2 did. There was a bit of an empty feeling that I had after I finished Borderlands 4, and that was that I realized that the series, or at least the idea of what the series was dead to me. With the state of events in the world, I think it's really easy to look back at certain video games with rose-tinted glasses and remember times when we had less responsibilities, had the potential to be anything, do anything. But as life goes on, reality starts looking more and more bleak, with responsible decisions and realistic outlooks starting to take over our lives. There was a recent song released by my favorite band, A Day to Remember, called Feedback. This song details frontman Jeremy McKinnon's frustrations with people's disapproval of the direction that was being taken with the band, with them trying out new ways to express themselves in their music, and not necessarily doing the thing that they always did before. Hence the line, "Strike a chord, I don't play no more." but it highlights the fundamental idea that is it really art if you do the same thing over and over and over again for other people when your heart, mind, body, and soul are telling you to do something else? If people grow and evolve, it should be expected that their art will change with that too, and can't appeal to our sensibilities 100% of the time. With people from Borderlands 1 and 2 leaving Gearbox or getting promoted to executive positions, it should be expected that the series and its direction will change with that. I just won't be a part of that anymore, and there won't be another experience just like Borderlands 1 or 2. But that's okay. It made me realize I've changed too. The satisfaction from the loot grinds I liked from previous entries has been replaced by MMOs and the feeling that you get when you finish making a video. There are so many other interesting RPG games with great lore, worlds, and more gameplay elements to interact with all of it. And the feeling of every run being unique and having its own build and direction you didn't expect has been filled by so many amazing roguelikes that exist out there nowadays. Everything that I liked about Borderlands, I feel like other games just do them better now, even if you account for it being an all-in-one package. The idea of an RPG looter shooter just isn't unique anymore. In fact, it's starting to be the standard. There are a couple ideas from Borderlands that still live on now in other games. The series drilled the loot progression colors and their respective beams into all of our heads and normalized the criticism of corporate greed and how the pursuit of money at all costs inherently cheapens human life. But I think now it's time for me to say goodbye to Borderlands, and that sometimes it's better to say goodbye, let go, and appreciate all of the fun times you had, rather than hold resentment over things you can't control. It's best to live in the present, chase your dreams, and quit chasing the past, and take all the things you've learned along the way with you in your future adventures.